The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy that flows through space and time. For millennia, the Jedi had studied this mystical power, believing they understood the fundamental nature of reality itself. They were wrong. Because some things don't come from their reality at all. The first sign that something had gone catastrophically wrong with the universe appeared as a greenish tear in space above the planet Christophis. It wasn't a hyperspace signature. It wasn't a wormhole. It violated every principle of known physics, pulsing with colors that shouldn't exist and emitting radiation that made sensors scream warnings in languages their programming didn't include. The rift hung there for exactly 7 seconds, vomiting sparks of impossible energy, before spitting out a battered spacecraft that looked like someone had welded a flying saucer to a hot rod and then taken a blowtorch to the whole thing for aesthetic purposes. The ship plummeted through Christophis's atmosphere trailing green fire and what smelled distinctly like cheap whiskey burning in vacuum. It crashed into the crystalline plains 3 kilometers from the Republic forward operating base with enough force to create a crater and send a mushroom cloud of pulverized crystal into the air. Separatist sensors picked it up immediately. So did the Jedi. Unknown contact, bearing 275, reported Clone Commander Cody, his helmet's HUD displaying the impact site. No hyperspace entry detected. No transponder. Whatever that was just appeared. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood on the command platform overlooking the battlefield, his hand instinctively moving to his lightsaber. The Force rippled with something he'd never felt before, not danger, exactly, but wrongness. Like reality had hiccuped. Scramble a reconnaissance team. And Commander, approach with caution. That arrival was not natural. What Obi-Wan didn't know, what nobody in the entire Star Wars galaxy could have known, was that the ship's pilot was already awake, already analyzing his situation, and already deeply, profoundly annoyed. Rick Sanchez kicked open the twisted hatch of his spacecraft and stumbled out into crystalline sunlight, a flask in one hand and a strange pistol in the other. He was tall and lanky, with wild blue-gray hair that stuck up in every direction, a white lab coat stained with substances that would require three-dimensional chemistry to identify, and an expression of absolute contempt for everything around him. "Fanurp-tastic," he muttered, taking a pull from his flask while surveying the crater. "Portal gun clips a quantum foam pocket, and I end up in, what, discount Tatooine? Crystal meth Tatooine." He pressed a button on his wrist device. "Ship, diagnostic." A feminine AI voice responded from the wreckage, "Hull integrity 62%. Portal gun offline, exotic matter reserves depleted. Recommend acquiring local isotope alternatives. Also, Rick, sensors detect approximately 4,000 armed combatants within 10 kilometers. 20% organic, 80% robotic. Of course there's a ERP war happening. There's always a war happening." Rick pulled out a scanner that looked like a modified smartphone had mated with a Geiger counter. He pointed it at the sky, then at the ground, then at the distant city where Republic and Separatist forces were locked in combat. His expression shifted from annoyed to incredulous. "Oh, you've got to be shitting me. This is a Star Wars dimension." The scanner beeped. "Confirmed. Observable technology matches IGS 2187 classification, Star Wars Cinematic Universe, Clone Wars temporal period, approximately 19 years before Battle of Yavin." Rick stared at the device. Then he started laughing, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed across the crystal plains. "I'm in a ERP space opera. I'm in a fucking space opera with laser swords and space wizards." He took another drink. "Universe really hates me today." The whine of repulsor engines interrupted his existential mockery. 3 Separatist vulture droids descended toward the crater in attack formation, their sensor arrays fixating on the unknown contact. Their droid brains processed Rick as, unidentified, unarmed, incorrectly, potential Republic asset, threat level minimal. Rick watched them approach with the expression of a man who'd seen this exact scenario play out across 1,000 dimensions. "Let me guess. Robots. Definitely robots." Probably here to either kill me or demand identification. And, yep, there's the weapons lock. The lead vulture droid's vocabulator crackled. Unidentified organic, you are in Separatist-controlled territory. Surrender immediately or be. Rick shot it. The weapon in his hand, which looked nothing like a blaster, fired a concentrated beam of blue-white energy that didn't just destroy the droid. It unmade it. The vulture droid collapsed into its component atoms, which briefly formed a small, localized atomic structure before dissipating into harmless radiation. The other two droids had exactly enough time to register threat level, extreme, before Rick shot them too. Particle beam cannon, Rick explained to nobody, holstering the weapon. Ionizes target matter at the subatomic level. Way better than your primitive blasters. No Tabana gas, no heat sinks, just pure molecular dissolution. He started walking toward his ship. Now, let's see what kind of backwards-ass physics this dimension runs on and how long before more tin cans show up. From the Republic observation post, Obi-Wan Kenobi watched the entire engagement through macrobinoculars. He'd witnessed the impossible arrival, the casual destruction of 3 combat droids with technology he'd never seen, and the complete absence of any Force presence from the stranger. Commander Cody, he said quietly, his Jedi training maintaining calm over growing unease. Assemble a diplomatic team. Whoever that is, they're not separatist, but they're also not natural. I sense nothing from them through the Force. It's as if they don't exist. Maybe they don't, sir, Cody replied, still watching the scanner data. That ship's power signature matches nothing in our databases. And those weapons, General, that technology shouldn't be possible. Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber, the blue blade humming to life. In my experience, Commander, impossible simply means we haven't understood it yet. Come. Let's meet our mysterious visitor before the Separatists send something worse than vulture droids. As the LAAT gunship lifted off toward the crash site, Rick was already elbow-deep in his ship's circuitry, pulling out the damaged portal gun and examining its cracked exotic matter chamber. Alright, space opera dimension, let's see what you've got. Need to synthesize stable dark matter, recalibrate dimensional frequencies, and find enough ethanol to make this hangover worth it. Shouldn't take more than a few days if these morons have anything resembling particle accelerators. He paused, scanner beeping again. Oh, and deal with the incoming space wizards. Great. Love space wizards. Really complete the whole Rick's Worst Wednesday vibe. The LAAT gunship descended toward the crater, carrying Jedi, clone troopers, and questions that Rick Sanchez had absolutely no intention of answering honestly. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Clone Wars had just become infinitely more complicated. The LAAT gunship settled onto the crystalline ground 50 meters from the crater, its repulsor lifts kicking up clouds of glittering dust. Obi-Wan Kenobi stepped out first, his hand resting near his lightsaber but not gripping it, a deliberate gesture of cautious diplomacy. Behind him, Commander Cody and 6 clone troopers fanned out in defensive formation, their DC-15 blasters trained on the smoking wreckage. Unknown traveler, Obi-Wan called out, projecting his voice with Force-enhanced authority. I am Jedi General Obi-Wan Kenobi of the Galactic Republic. You've crashed in an active combat zone. We're here to offer assistance and... Yeah, I'm gonna stop you right there, Space Wizard. Rick emerged from behind his ship, wiping grease off his hands with a rag that was somehow dirtier than his hands. He looked Obi-Wan up and down with the expression of someone evaluating a particularly disappointing science fair project. Let me guess. You sensed a disturbance in the Force. Or wait, no, you didn't sense anything, which is freaking you out because your magic powers don't work on me. That about cover it? Obi-Wan's carefully maintained diplomatic expression flickered. The stranger had just articulated exactly what was disturbing him. You're familiar with the Force. I'm familiar with about 40 different dimensional variations of psychic energy fields that primitive civilizations mistake for spirituality, Rick said, taking a drink from his flask. Your force is just quantum probability manipulation triggered by microscopic organisms in your bloodstream. Midichlorians, right? Basically sentient mitochondria that let you fuck with causality on a local scale. It's cute. Very Bronze Age meets biotech. Every clone trooper's rifle came up simultaneously. Obi-Wan's hand moved to his lightsaber hilt. The casual dismissal of the Force, the foundational truth of the Jedi Order, was borderline heretical. More concerning was that this stranger understood it in terms Obi-Wan had never heard from even the most learned masters. I'd advise against hostile action, Obi-Wan said carefully, his diplomatic training wrestling with genuine curiosity. Your weapons may be advanced, but... Rick laughed, that same harsh, bitter sound. But what? You'll deflect my shots with your laser sword. Kid, that's a plasma blade contained by a magnetic field. I've got a gun that fires projectiles that don't have a trajectory because they quantum tunnel through intervening space. Your lightsaber would try to block it and just, not. The shot would already be inside your chest cavity. He holstered the weapon casually. But relax, Obi-Wan. Yeah, I know your name. Scanned your comm frequencies on the way down. I'm not here to fight the Republic. I'm not here to fight anybody. I'm just here because my portal gun shit the bed and dropped me in franchise hell. Portal gun. Cody interjected, his tactical mind cataloging threats. You're claiming interdimensional travel capability? Not claiming, Commander Cody, Clone Trooper, Template Designation CT-2224, Jango Fett Genetic Source, Inhibitor Chip Designation CC-5576. Yeah, I've already hacked your armor's biometric ID. Rick pointed at each trooper in turn. You're all slaves with a time bomb in your heads, by the way. Just FYI. Anyway, yeah, interdimensional travel. Multiverse is infinite. Infinite dimensions, infinite variations. This one just happens to have space monks and a galactic war that's obviously being manipulated by somebody because nobody runs a conflict this symmetrically without serious control over both sides. The silence that followed was profound. Obi-Wan felt the Force swirling with confusion, not from the stranger, who remained an empty void in his perception, but from the clone troopers whose disciplined minds were suddenly wrestling with impossible information delivered with absolute confidence. You're suggesting our war is, Obi-Wan began. Manufactured? Yeah. Look, I've been conscious for about 10 minutes in your dimension and I can already tell this whole thing stinks. You've got a republic that's supposedly democratic but is really an oligarchic bureaucracy. You've got separatists who want independence but are led by corporate interests and a suspicious number of dark Jedi. Both sides using clone slaves and droid armies instead of actual citizen soldiers, which keeps casualties concentrated and public anger manageable. And you, Rick pointed at Obi-Wan, you're a general. A religious general. The Jedi are supposed to be peacekeepers, but here you are commanding armies. Somebody played you. Obi-Wan's jaw tightened. Every word was an arrow hitting targets he'd spent 3 years trying not to examine too closely. The Jedi Council had debated their role in the war endlessly. Many, including Obi-Wan himself, had questioned whether they'd strayed from their path. But hearing it laid out so bluntly by a complete stranger, one who couldn't be sensed, couldn't be read, couldn't be understood through any familiar framework, was profoundly unsettling. Your analysis is, simplified, Obi-Wan said, his voice carefully neutral. The situation is more complex than. It really isn't. Look, Space Wizard, I've seen this play out in 100 dimensions. Authoritarian takeover disguised as emergency powers, manufactured crisis that justifies giving up freedom for security, charismatic leader who promises order. You're Chancellor Palpatine, he's the one running both sides, isn't he? Sith Lord, probably. Let me guess, unlimited emergency powers, appointed not elected to his current term, and he just keeps finding reasons why the war can't end yet? Obi-Wan's hand was on his lightsaber now, not threatening, but ready. That's a serious accusation. The Chancellor is the bad guy. Yeah. Always is. Rick turned back to his ship, apparently unconcerned with the armed Jedi and clone troopers behind him. But hey, not my circus, not my clones. I just need to synthesize about 40 grams of stable exotic matter, recalibrate my dimensional frequency generator, and get the hell out of your laser sword dimension before I get dragged into your space opera bullshit. You're not leaving. Cody's voice was hard, professional. That technology represents a potential threat to Republic security. You'll need to come with us for debriefing. Rick stopped walking. He turned slowly, and for the first time, his expression shifted from annoyed to dangerous. Commander, you're a good soldier. Loyal, competent, probably make tough calls when you have to. But you're also literally programmed to obey orders from people who put a control chip in your brain. So here's my counteroffer, I'm going to repair my ship, and you're going to let me, because if you try to detain me, I will disable every clone trooper here with neural disruptors, cut through your Jedi's defenses with weapons he can't block, and then I'll be annoyed enough to hack your military networks just to see what other fun secrets your Republic is hiding. Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber. The blue blade hummed between them, a line drawn in crystalline dust. I cannot allow you to leave with that technology. And I certainly cannot allow you to threaten Republic personnel. His voice carried the weight of Jedi authority, the force flowing through his words. You will come with us peacefully, or, Rick pulled out a device that looked like a TV remote crossed with a medical scanner. He pressed a button. Every clone trooper froze. Not stunned, not unconscious, frozen. Their muscles locked, their weapons hung in mid-grip, their eyes still tracked movement, but their bodies refused commands. Only Obi-Wan, protected by the Force's subtle influence over his biology, remained mobile. Neural inhibitor field, Rick explained, waving the device. Broadcasts a signal that temporarily disrupts voluntary motor control. Works great on clones because they've all got identical neural architecture. Your Force mojo is compensating for it, but they can't. He pointed at Cody, who stood rigid, only his eyes moving with furious awareness. Don't worry, Commander. Wears off in about 5 minutes. No permanent damage. Probably. Obi-Wan moved. His lightsaber came up in a classic Sorisu defensive stance, and he lunged forward with force-enhanced speed, blade angled to disarm without killing. It was a perfect execution of Form 3, the technique that had saved his life 1,000 times. Rick shot him. Not with the particle beam. With something else, a blast of energy that Obi-Wan's lightsaber intersected perfectly, deflecting it at a 45-degree angle where it hit a crystal formation and bounced harmlessly into the sky. Obi-Wan pressed the attack, his blade moving in the precise, economical movements that defined his fighting style. Rick shot him again. And again. Each blast deflected, each attack parried by a Jedi Master who'd fought Grievous, Ventress, and countless Sith assassins. But Rick wasn't trying to hit him. He was aiming around him. The blasts hit the ground in a specific pattern. When the 8th shot completed the circle, the crystal formations erupted in a localized electromagnetic pulse that sent Obi-Wan stumbling, his lightsaber flickering as its magnetic containment momentarily destabilized. Cute sword, Rick said, already back at his ship. But you're fighting someone who doesn't do linear combat. I don't outduel you. I changed the battlefield's physics. He disappeared into his ship's interior. His voice echoed out, now get off my crash site before I do something we'll both regret and only one of us will survive. Obi-Wan deactivated his lightsaber, breathing hard, his mind racing. The stranger had neutralized 6 clone troopers without harming them, defended against a Jedi Master without lethal force, and demonstrated technology that rendered conventional tactics obsolete. He wasn't just powerful. He was unpredictable. Dangerous. And worst of all, he might be right about the war. The neural inhibitor field faded. Cody immediately raised his rifle, but Obi-Wan held up a hand. "Stand down, Commander." "General," he attacked. He defended himself. "There's a difference." Obi-Wan stared at the wrecked ship, feeling the Force's absence where Rick worked. "And he told us things I need to verify." "Commander, contact General Skywalker. Tell him we have a situation that requires Council attention. And Cody, don't mention the part about the chips." Cody's expression behind his helmet remained unreadable. "Understood, sir." As the LAAT lifted off, Obi-Wan cast one last look at the crater. The stranger, Rick, had arrived in their galaxy less than an hour ago and had already destabilized everything the Jedi thought they understood. Inside the ship, Rick pulled up a holographic display showing the Republic military network. He'd been hacking it since the moment the gunship landed. "Alright, space opera dimension. Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes." Order 66, Contingency Orders, Black Site Operations, Senate Communications. He scrolled through encrypted files like they were written in plain text. "Oh yeah. This is gonna be fun. Palpatine, you sneaky Sith bastard. Let's see how your plan holds up when somebody who gives zero fucks about your Force destiny crap starts pulling threads." The scanner beeped. More ships incoming. Separatist this time. Rick grinned, an expression that would have terrified anyone who knew him. "Good. Need to field test some weapons anyway." The Separatist Recusant-class destroyer hung in low orbit above Christophis like a dagger pointed at the Republic's throat. On its bridge, tactical droid TJ-912 processed the unusual sensor data with the cold efficiency that made his model effective battlefield commanders. An unknown contact. 3 Vulture droids destroyed by unconventional weapons. Republic forces investigating but maintaining distance. Conclusion: potential Republic superweapon or Jedi trick. Deploy ground forces, TJ-912 commanded in its flat, emotionless tone. 6 AATs, 2 squads of B-2 battle droids, 1 commando droid infiltration unit. Capture the unknown technology intact. Lethal force authorized on organic resistance. The war machines descended through the atmosphere in precise formation, their targeting computers already painting the crash site. They had numbers, firepower, and tactical superiority. What they didn't have was any frame of reference for Rick Sanchez. Rick watched them come on his ship's external monitors while simultaneously running 3 different analysis programs on the Republic military network. "Ship, how's that exotic matter synthesis coming?" 17% complete, the AI responded. "Local particle accelerator construction required. Estimated completion time, 48 hours given available materials. Gonna need to speed that up. Can't build a lab if I'm dodging battle droids every 6 minutes." He pulled out what looked like a modified smartphone and scrolled through options labeled in languages that didn't exist in this dimension. "Let's see, anti-armor mines, check. Automated defense turrets, check. Micro black hole generator, nah, too much collateral damage. Don't need to accidentally eat the planet." The AATs, armored assault tanks, rolled across the crystal plains in attack formation, their heavy laser cannons charging. Behind them, B-2 super battle droids marched in perfect synchronization, wrist-mounted blasters ready. The commando droids moved faster, their programming allowing for tactical creativity that regular battle droids lacked. Rick stepped out of his ship carrying what appeared to be a metal briefcase. He set it down 30 meters from the crater's edge, pressed a button, and walked back to his ship while drinking from his flask. "Alright, robot army. Let's see how you handle actual science." The briefcase unfolded. It wasn't a weapon. It was a manufacturing facility. Microscopic assemblers poured out like metallic liquid, consuming the crystalline ground and converting it into raw materials. Within 15 seconds, a perimeter of sleek silver turrets had grown from the planet's surface, their design looking nothing like Star Wars technology. They hummed with power, tracking systems locking onto the approaching separatist forces. The lead AAT fired first. Its heavy laser cannon sent a concentrated energy blast toward Rick's ship. The turrets responded with mathematics. Each turret fired a pulse of gravitational distortion, not enough to create a singularity, but enough to bend space in a localized area. The laser blast curved, following the distorted spacetime, and impacted harmlessly into the ground 20 meters from its intended target. The AAT's onboard computer tried to recalculate targeting, failed to compensate for weapons that violated known physics, and settled for advance and overwhelm. It managed to get 15 meters closer before the turrets switched to lethal mode. The gravitational pulse hit the AAT's front armor and compressed it. Not crushed, compressed. The molecular structure of the durasteel collapsed into itself, and the entire front section of the tank folded inward like paper in a hydraulic press. The tank stopped, disabled but not exploded, its crew compartment intact but trapped inside warped metal. Non-lethal when possible, Rick called out cheerfully. I'm not a ERP monster. Just disabled 600,000 credits of military hardware without killing the organic crew inside. That's practically heroic in this dimension. The B-2 battle droids opened fire, dozens of wrist blasters creating a wall of energy bolts. The turrets shifted tactics, generating localized electromagnetic shields that absorbed the blaster fire and converted it into stored energy. When the shields hit capacity, they discharged, sending the accumulated energy back at the droids in one massive pulse that overloaded their circuits and sent them toppling like metallic dominoes. The commando droids, smart enough to recognize impossible odds, tried to retreat. Rick pressed another button on his remote. The ground beneath them liquefied, not into lava, but into a stable non-Newtonian fluid that his assemblers had converted the crystal into. The commando droids sank up to their waist actuators, their superior programming unable to overcome physics that had been locally rewritten. And that, Rick announced to no one in particular, is why you don't bring ERP 1970s movie props to a dimension-hopping scientist's fight. On the Recusant-class destroyer, TJ-912 observed the total loss of ground forces in under 2 minutes. Its tactical algorithms ran probability analyses. All returned the same conclusion: insufficient data, threat level incalculable, recommend withdrawal and report to Separatist High Command. For a tactical droid, that was the closest thing to feeling fear. Retreat to orbital position, TJ-912 commanded. Transmit priority alert to Count Dooku, unknown technological threat, exceeds Republic capability parameters, recommend Sith assessment. The message bounced through Separatist communication networks, was encrypted 6 times, and arrived at Sereno within the hour. Count Dooku, formerly Jedi Master, now Sith Lord and political leader of the Separatist Alliance, read it with the measured calm that came from decades of studying the Force. Then he read it again, because tactical droids did not exaggerate or panic. Unknown technology that neutralized an entire assault force without casualties, Dooku mused, his elegant voice carrying the aristocratic accent of Sereno's nobility. And the Republic is equally confused. He reached out through the Force, trying to sense this anomaly. Nothing. A void. An absence where something should exist. Dooku had felt that emptiness only once before, around the Yuuzhan Vong in historical records, species from outside the galaxy who existed beyond the Force's touch. But this was different. Not Force-resistant. Force-absent. As if the individual simply didn't belong to this reality. He activated his holocommunicator. The blue hologram of Darth Sidious materialized, hooded and imposing even in miniature. My apprentice, Sidious's voice dripped with dark satisfaction. I sense you have encountered something unexpected. Master, there is a disturbance on Christophis. An individual with technology that exceeds both Republic and Separatist capabilities. The Jedi cannot sense him through the Force. His arrival was not via hyperspace. And he defeated our forces without killing, suggesting intelligence, restraint, and power in equal measure. Sidious was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, there was something in his voice that Dooku had rarely heard, genuine interest. Describe the technology. Dooku relayed the tactical droid's report: gravitational manipulation, matter conversion, defensive systems that violated conventional physics. With each detail, Sidious's presence in the Force grew heavier, more calculating. This individual could disrupt our plans, Sidious said carefully. Or he could be useful. Someone not bound by the Force, not predictable through precognition, immune to our manipulation, yes. Either a perfect tool or a perfect threat. What are your orders, Master? Observe. Do not engage directly yet. Let the Jedi make the first mistake. Sidious's hologram flickered. If this stranger is as intelligent as he appears, he will recognize the truth of our war. The question is whether he will interfere, or profit. The holocommunication ended. Dooku stared at the tactical reports, his mind, still partially that of a Jedi despite decades of dark side philosophy, wrestling with uncomfortable questions. An outsider. Someone who existed beyond the Force's will. Someone who could, theoretically, act with true free will in a galaxy where destiny and prophecy shaped everything. Fascinating, Dooku murmured. And terrifying. Back on Christophis, Rick was oblivious to the attention he'd attracted from both sides of the galactic war. He'd already dismissed the separatist attack as Tuesday morning warm-up and returned to his actual priority, building a particle accelerator from scavenged separatist technology and local crystal formations. Ship, pull up everything this dimension knows about exotic matter, dark energy, and hyperspace mechanics, he said, elbow deep in an AAT's power core. Their FTL is interesting. Not as elegant as portal technology, but they're punching through higher dimensions without understanding the math. Typical. Stumble into the solution, call it hyperdrive, never ask why it works. Downloaded, the AI confirmed. Also, Rick, you have incoming communication from the Republic. Audio only. The Jedi General is requesting dialogue. Rick sighed. Put him through. But if he starts talking about the Force's will, I'm hanging up. Obi-Wan's voice crackled through the comm, I'm hoping we can speak more civilly than our last encounter. Depends. You gonna try to arrest me again? I'm considering alternatives. You defeated a separatist assault force without causing casualties. That suggests you're not hostile, merely defensive. Defensive is a strong word. I just don't like being shot at. Call it a personality quirk. Rick pulled a glowing component from the AAT's reactor. Look, Kenobi, I get what you're doing. You think if you talk nice, maybe I'll share my tech, help your war effort, be a good little dimensional refugee. Not interested. What are you interested in? Rick paused. It was the right question. Not, what do you want, or, why are you here? What are you interested in? The Jedi was smarter than his space wizard costume suggested. Going home, Rick said honestly. That's it. Repair my portal gun, get back to my dimension, forget this franchise exists. And if we helped you? Provided resources, protection while you work. Then you'd want something in return. That's how transactions work. And whatever you want, weapons, tech, strategic advantage, would drag me into your war. Hard pass. Obi-Wan was quiet for a moment. You said our war was manufactured. That someone was manipulating both sides. If you truly believe that, don't you have a moral obligation to? Rick laughed, that harsh, bitter sound. Moral obligation. Space wizard, I've watched entire civilizations collapse. I've seen dimensions where everyone made the moral choice and it led to extinction. Morality is an evolutionary trick to encourage social cooperation. It doesn't scale to galactic politics, and it definitely doesn't apply to interdimensional travelers who are just passing through. So you'll do nothing? Even knowing the truth? I'll do what I always do. Survive. Go home. Let the locals handle local problems. Rick's voice hardened. But here's some free advice, Obi-Wan, that chancellor of yours. The one with the emergency powers. Start asking who benefits from this war never ending. Start asking why you're a general instead of a peacekeeper. Start asking what happens when your clone army gets new orders. What orders? The ones that are already programmed into their heads. The ones waiting for activation. But hey, I'm just a crazy drunk with a spaceship. What do I know about authoritarian takeovers disguised as security measures? The calm went silent. Rick had planted the seed. Whether it grew was Kenobi's problem. Rick returned to his work, assembling a particle accelerator from tank reactors, crystal formations, and technology that shouldn't work together but did because Rick Sanchez understood physics in ways this galaxy hadn't discovered yet. He didn't notice the Force-sensitive observer watching from 5 kilometers away. Anakin Skywalker, newly arrived from the orbital battle, stood on a crystal outcropping and stared at the crash site. The Chosen One, prophesied to bring balance to the Force, looking at someone who existed outside prophecy entirely. "Who are you?" Anakin whispered. The Force offered no answer. Only silence where Rick Sanchez stood. Anakin Skywalker had spent his entire life being watched by the Force. Every action, every choice, scrutinized through the lens of ancient prophecy. The Chosen One. Destined to bring balance. Even his most private moments carried the weight of cosmic expectation. So when he reached out through the Force toward the crash site and felt absolutely nothing, not darkness, not light, not even the dull presence of non-Force sensitives, it was like staring into a hole in reality. "Master, are you seeing this?" Anakin spoke into his comlink, still watching Rick's makeshift construction project through macro binoculars. Obi-Wan's voice crackled back. "If by this you mean the stranger building what appears to be a functional particle accelerator from scavenged battle droid parts in under an hour, then yes, Anakin. I'm seeing it. I'm also deeply concerned about it. He's not in the Force. At all. It's like he doesn't exist. I'm aware. I've already contacted the Council. Masters Yoda and Windu are convening an emergency session." Obi-Wan paused. "Anakin, under no circumstances are you to approach him alone. He's already demonstrated capabilities that exceed." Anakin was already walking toward the crash site. "I'm just going to talk to him, Master. Get a read on his intentions." "Anakin." He switched off the comlink. Obi-Wan meant well, but sometimes caution looked too much like fear. Anakin had fought Sith Lords, destroyed capital ships, led armies across a dozen worlds. One stranger with advanced technology didn't scare him. Besides, if this Rick was as dangerous as Obi-Wan suggested, they needed to know more than sensor readings could tell them. The crystal planes crunched under Anakin's boots as he approached. Rick didn't look up from his work, though Anakin was certain he'd been detected. The man was soldering components together with a tool that generated contained plasma without any visible power source, muttering to himself in a constant stream of technical jargon and profanity. "So you're the Chosen One," Rick said without looking up. "Prophesied to bring balance to the Force, born of no father, strongest Force-sensitive in generations, currently being groomed by a Sith Lord who's also your boss's boss. That about cover it?" Anakin's hand went to his lightsaber. "How do you know about?" "Kid, I hacked your military network 3 hours ago. Got your complete personnel file, psych evaluations, mission records, and about 6,000 hours of security footage. You're famous. Well, famous-ish. More like, the Jedi keep talking about you in concerned tones behind closed doors famous." Rick finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot but sharp with intelligence that made Anakin uncomfortable. "Also, you're married to Senator Amidala, which violates Jedi rules, and you've got some seriously unresolved anger issues about your mom. Textbook pathway to the dark side, according to your order's own philosophy." Anakin ignited his lightsaber. The blue blade hummed between them, casting sharp shadows across the crystal formations. You need to stop talking. Right now. Or what? You'll kill me. Rick took a drink from his flask, unconcerned with the plasma blade 3 meters from his chest. Gonna embrace that anger, let it fuel your power, prove you're not just some prophecy's puppet by making impulsive violent choices. Yeah, that'll really show you're in control. I said stop. And I said no. Rick stood up, facing Anakin without weapons, without fear, without anything but contempt. You want to take a swing at me, chosen one? Go ahead. See what happens when you try to cut someone who exists outside your force-predetermined universe. Spoiler alert, your magic sword meets my localized dimensional shield, and one of us has a really bad day. Hint, it's the one who thinks destiny matters. Anakin didn't swing. Not because of the threat, but because Rick was right about one thing, he was angry. Furious, actually. This stranger had appeared out of nowhere, invaded Republic systems, exposed Anakin's deepest secrets, and stood there mocking everything the Jedi represented. Every instinct screamed to attack, to eliminate this threat, to prove his power. Which was exactly what Rick expected. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber. What do you want? Now we're getting somewhere. Rick returned to his work, apparently satisfied that the violent confrontation had been avoided. I want to fix my portal gun and leave. That's it. But your galaxy keeps throwing obstacles at me. First the droids, then your master trying to arrest me, now you showing up for a pissing contest. Just let me work. And if the technology you're building could threaten the Republic? Then the Republic has bigger problems than me, considering I found about 47 critical security vulnerabilities in your military network, any one of which could collapse your entire command structure. Rick pointed at Anakin with a soldering tool. Also, your inhibitor chips. The ones in every clone trooper's brain. You aware those have a executable protocol labeled Order 66 that will make them kill all Jedi on command? Anakin stared. That's not possible. The clones are loyal. The clones are programmed. There's a difference. Loyalty is a choice. Programming is compulsion. Rick pulled up a holographic display showing clone trooper neural architecture with a blinking indicator near the brain stem. See that? Biochip. Officially it's for behavioral modification and accelerated learning. Unofficially, it's a kill switch. Someone says the magic words, and your entire army turns on you. Probably happens right when your Chancellor declares himself Emperor or whatever predictable fascist move he's planning. Why are you telling me this? Rick shrugged. Because you're standing here interrupting my work, and if I tell you something that'll eat at your brain for the next few days, maybe you'll leave me alone and go investigate. He returned to soldering. Also, because prophecies are bullshit. You're not the chosen one. You're a traumatized kid with PTSD and power that nobody taught you to process healthily. The only destiny you have is the one you choose. But if you keep letting fear drive your decisions, yeah, you'll probably go dark side. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Tale as old as time. Anakin should have left. Should have returned to Obi-Wan, reported everything, let the council handle this. Instead, he sat down on a crystal formation 20 meters from Rick's work area. You said you've seen other dimensions. Other versions of this? Of genocidal wars manipulated by hidden authoritarians? Yeah, couple dozen. Seen it go 100 different ways. Sometimes the good guys win. Sometimes the fascists do. Sometimes everybody loses and the dimension collapses into existential horror. Rick didn't look up from his work. Your dimension. You're currently on the everybody loses track. Republic becomes empire, Jedi get wiped out, galaxy suffers under tyranny for a couple decades until some farm kid blows up a space station and starts a rebellion. Classic hero's journey stuff. Very Joseph Campbell. That's one possible future. The Force shows many paths. The Force shows you what you expect to see. It's confirmation bias with extra steps. Rick finally paused, looking at Anakin with something that might have been pity. Look, kid, you want my advice? Actual advice from someone who's lived way too long and seen way too much. I didn't come here for advice. Tough. You're getting it anyway. That wife of yours, Padme. She's pregnant, right? Twins. You've been having visions of her dying in childbirth, which is freaking you out, making you desperate for power to save her. That desperation is exactly what Palpatine is counting on. He'll offer you dark side knowledge, promise you can save her, and all you have to do is betray everything you believe in. Anakin stood up, his hand on his lightsaber again. How do you know about? Because I hacked your personal logs too. You keep a journal, Skywalker. Very thorough one. Honestly, it's good practice. Emotional processing through writing helps with the PTSD. But maybe encrypt it better than Padme's birthday as the password. Rick pointed the soldering tool at him again. Here's the thing about prophecies and visions, they're self-fulfilling when you make choices based on fear. You're afraid she'll die, so you'll do anything to prevent it, including things that guarantee she dies. Classic tragedy structure. Very Greek. You're lying. I'm really not. And deep down, you know it. The Force is probably screaming at you right now that I'm telling the truth. Rick returned to his work. So here's my advice, chosen one, stop trying to control the future. Talk to your wife. Actually tell her about the visions instead of bottling them up. Trust that she's strong enough to face this with you. And for the love of science, stop trusting Palpatine. He's the villain. It's so obvious it hurts. Anakin wanted to argue. Wanted to defend the Chancellor, who'd been a friend and mentor when the Council kept him at arm's length. Wanted to dismiss everything this stranger said as lies designed to create chaos. But the Force was swirling around him with uncomfortable recognition. Not confirmation, exactly, the Force didn't work that way. But it wasn't denial either. Why do you care? Anakin asked quietly. You said you just want to leave. So why tell me any of this? Rick was silent for a long moment, his hands still working but his expression distant. Because I've got a daughter. Somewhere in the multiverse. And I destroyed our relationship because I thought I knew better, thought I could control everything, thought my intelligence meant I didn't need to actually communicate. He took a long drink from his flask. You've got a chance to not be like me. Don't waste it. The honesty in that statement hit harder than any Force vision. This wasn't manipulation or strategy. It was just exhaustion and regret from someone who'd lived too long with bad choices. The Council won't believe me, Anakin said. About the chips, about Palpatine. They'll say I'm being influenced by. Then don't tell the Council. Tell the clones. Tell Rex, your captain. He's smart enough to investigate without alerting whoever's running this operation. Rick pulled a small device from his pocket and tossed it to Anakin. Neural scanner. Point it at any clone's head, it'll show you the chip. Cold, hard evidence. Take that to a medical droid you trust, get it removed quietly. Start small. Build proof. Anakin caught the device, staring at it. Technology that could expose a conspiracy at the heart of the Republic. Knowledge that would force him to question everything. The easy path was to throw it away, return to Obi-Wan, forget this conversation happened. He pocketed the device. You're still leaving? Anakin asked. Even knowing what's coming. Especially knowing what's coming. Not my galaxy, not my fight. I've played hero across 1,000 dimensions, and you know what it got me? More trauma, more loss, more reasons to drink. Rick gestured at his partially completed particle accelerator. I'll be gone in 48 hours. What you do with the information is your choice. That's the point. It's always a choice. Anakin turned to leave, then stopped. That thing about the farm kid blowing up a space station. You said that's how this ends. One version of how it ends. If things go according to ERP canon. But you've got me here now, which means things are already off script. Might end completely differently. Might end worse. Might end better. That's the fun of free will, nobody knows. Anakin walked away across the crystal plains, the neural scanner heavy in his pocket and Rick's words heavier in his mind. Behind him, Rick returned to his work, building a particle accelerator that would tear a hole between dimensions and let him escape a galaxy that wasn't his problem. But on Coruscant, in the Senate building, Chancellor Palpatine felt a disturbance. Not in the Force, that remained frustratingly blind to this anomaly. But in his carefully constructed plans. Someone was introducing chaos into his perfectly balanced equation. Darth Sidious smiled in his private chambers. Chaos could be useful. Or it could be eliminated. Time would tell which. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant stood as a monument to 10,000 years of tradition, its spires reaching toward the sky as if trying to touch the Force itself. In the council chamber at its peak, 12 of the Order's greatest masters sat in contemplative silence, processing the information Obi-Wan Kenobi had just delivered via hologram. Master Yoda's ears twitched, his ancient eyes half-closed in meditation. A disturbance, this is. Great and terrible both. Terrible seems appropriate. Mace Windu said, his deep voice carrying the weight of authority. An individual who exists outside the Force, wielding technology that exceeds both Republic and Separatist capabilities, and who claims our war is manufactured. Obi-Wan, you're certain he cannot be sensed? Obi-Wan's hologram nodded. Completely absent, Master Windu. It's as if he occupies no space in the Force at all. Even droids leave an impression, the absence of life. This man is simply, not there. And his claims about the Chancellor? Ki-Adi-Mundi leaned forward, his expression troubled. That's a serious accusation to bring to the Council based on a stranger's word. He didn't accuse directly, Obi-Wan clarified. He implied. Suggested we investigate who benefits from the war's continuation. But his certainty was, he paused, choosing words carefully. Disturbing. He spoke as someone who'd seen this pattern before. Many times. Plo Koon's voice filtered through his breathing mask, this talk of other dimensions, other realities, is it possible? Could the Force allow such things? The Force is what penetrates us, binds the galaxy together, Yoda said slowly. But beyond our galaxy? Beyond our reality? Arrogant we would be, to assume our universe is all that exists. That's philosophy, Mace said curtly. We need strategy. This Rick Sanchez represents either a threat or an asset. We cannot simply let him repair his technology and vanish without understanding what he knows. He's made his intentions clear, Obi-Wan replied. He wants no involvement in our affairs. Every attempt at engagement has been met with defensive action or dismissal. Then perhaps the Council should make an official overture, Shak Ti suggested. Send a delegation he cannot easily dismiss. Make clear we seek understanding, not control. Yoda's eyes opened fully. Young Skywalker, he has spoken with this stranger. What did he learn? The Council chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to Obi-Wan's hologram, which flickered slightly as if the Jedi Master was weighing how much to reveal. Anakin reported that Rick confirmed his intention to leave as soon as possible. He also, Obi-Wan hesitated. He made claims about the clone army. About control mechanisms we were unaware of. What sort of mechanisms? Mace's voice sharpened. Behavioral modification chips. Allegedly programmed with contingency orders that could compel the clones to, Obi-Wan stopped, the words too dangerous to speak aloud even in the Council's private chamber. To act against their established loyalties. The silence that followed was profound. Every master in the chamber felt the force ripple with unease. The clone army was the Republic's backbone, their most trusted asset in a galaxy-spanning war. The suggestion that they were compromised struck at the foundation of everything the Jedi had built. Investigated, this must be, Yoda said finally. But carefully. If true, if our army has been subverted, then trust no one we can. If false, then paranoia this stranger seeks to sow. Either way, dangerous the knowledge is. I'll contact Shaak Ti on Kamino, Mace decided. Have her run discreet medical scans on the newest clones. If these chips exist, we'll find them. He looked at Obi-Wan's hologram. And you, old friend, keep that stranger contained on Christophis. Use whatever resources necessary, but do not let him leave until we understand what he knows and whether he poses a threat to the Republic. Obi-Wan's hologram flickered again. Master Windu, with respect, I don't believe we can contain him. He's already demonstrated the ability to neutralize our forces without casualties. If we escalate to a military confrontation, then we don't use military force, Mace interrupted. We use diplomacy. The Force. Whatever it takes. His expression hardened. We're fighting a war across 1,000 systems, Obi-Wan. We cannot afford an unpredictable element with unknown loyalties operating unchecked. The hologram blinked out. The council sat in contemplative silence, each master reaching out through the Force to sense the future, to glimpse what this stranger's presence meant for the galaxy. But the Force was clouded, unclear, offering only fragments and contradictions. The dark side's veil had obscured their vision for years, but this was different. This was a blank space where predictions simply stopped. Clouded, the future is, Yoda murmured. But not by darkness. By absence. As if this man exists outside destiny itself. That might be the most dangerous thing about him, Plo Koon observed. On Kamino, the ocean world that birthed the Republic's army, Shaak Ti walked the sterile white corridors of Tipoca City with growing unease. The Jedi Master had overseen clone production for 2 years, had watched millions of soldiers grow from embryos to warriors, had assured the Council that the Kaminoans' work was beyond reproach. Now she was going to verify that assurance. Nala Se, she said, entering the chief medical scientist's laboratory. I need to run comprehensive neurological scans on a selection of clone troopers. All batches, random sampling. The Kaminoans' black eyes regarded her without expression, their species had perfected the art of revealing nothing through body language. May I ask the purpose of these scans, Master Jedi? We conduct thorough medical evaluations on all units before deployment. I'm aware. Consider this a secondary verification. New concerns have arisen about long-term neurological development in accelerated growth subjects. It was a careful lie. Shaak Ti didn't enjoy deception, but if the chips existed and the Kaminoans knew about them, alerting them to an investigation would be catastrophic. She reached out through the Force, trying to sense Nala Se's intentions. The Kaminoan's presence was steady, professional, unrevealing. Either she was innocent, or she was an exceptional deceiver. Of course, Master Jedi. I will prepare the scanning equipment. Though I assure you, our quality control is absolute. I'm certain it is, Shaak Ti replied, her hand resting near her lightsaber. Nevertheless, I will observe personally. 3 hours later, she was staring at a holographic image of a clone trooper's brain. There, nestled against the brain stem, exactly where Rick Sanchez had described, a biochip. Organic in composition, integrated so seamlessly with neural tissue that it appeared almost natural. Almost. What is this? Shaak Ti asked, her voice dangerously calm. Nala Se's expression didn't change. A behavioral modification chip. Standard in all clones. It ensures behavioral compliance, reduces aggressive tendencies, accelerates training protocols. The Jedi Council approved its implementation during initial production. The Council approved no such thing. The Prime Minister authorized it on the Council's behalf. All documentation is in order, Master Jedi. Shak Ti's hand was on her lightsaber now. What else does it do? Nothing more. I assure you. You will show me the chip's complete programming. Now. The Kaminoan hesitated, the first genuine reaction Shak Ti had seen. That information is classified under special order of, the lightsaber ignited. Green light filled the laboratory, reflecting off sterile white surfaces. I am a Jedi Master and the Republic's designated overseer of this facility. There is no authority higher than mine in this city. Show me the programming, or I will assume the worst and act accordingly. Nala Se's fingers moved across her datapad with reluctant precision. A holographic display materialized, showing lines of genetic code and neural programming that Shak Ti didn't fully understand but recognized as complex behavioral commands. And there, buried in subroutines labeled with numerical designations, Order 66. She read the execution parameters. Her blood went cold. Contingency Order 66, in the event of Jedi officers acting against the interests of the Republic, and after receiving specific orders verified by the Supreme Commander, Chancellor, commanders are to execute their Jedi officers. Below it were dozens of other contingency orders. But Order 66 was different, more detailed, more specific, with neural pathways designed to override loyalty, emotion, and independent judgment. It wasn't a lawful order to be evaluated. It was a compulsion to be executed without question. Every clone trooper in the galaxy was a loaded weapon pointed at the Jedi Order, waiting for someone to pull the trigger. Who authorized this? Shak Ti's voice was barely a whisper. The Prime Minister, on direct order from, Nala Se stopped, her alien features betraying uncertainty for the first time. From Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas. Before his death. But Sifo-Dyas had died years before the clone army was commissioned. The timeline didn't match. Someone had used his name, his authority, to hide the truth. Someone with the power to manipulate Kaminoan records, Republic authorization, and Jedi documentation. Shak Ti closed her eyes, reaching out through the Force. She touched the minds of clone troopers across Tipoca City, thousands of them, training and preparing for deployment. Loyal soldiers. Good men. With time bombs in their heads. She opened her eyes. This facility is now under Jedi quarantine. No clones leave Kamino until the Council investigates fully. And you, Nala Se, are confined to this laboratory under guard. Master Jedi, we have deployment schedules. Which are now suspended. Shak Ti's comlink was already active. Master Windu, I have urgent news. The stranger was right. The chips exist. And they're worse than we imagined. Back on Christophis, Rick was unaware that his casual intelligence dump had triggered a crisis that would shake the Republic to its foundations. He was too busy completing his particle accelerator, which now sprawled across the crash site like technological modern art, scavenged AAT reactors, crystalline focusing arrays, and components that existed in quantum superposition until observed. Ship, power output, he called. 93% of required exotic matter synthesis capacity, the AI responded. Estimated 22 hours until portal gun restoration. Good. Another day in this ERP dimension and I'll start understanding their accents. Rick took a drink from his flask, which somehow never seemed to empty. Run a final diagnostic on dimensional frequency alignment. Don't want to punch through to the Cronenberg dimension by mistake. Made that error once. Not fun. His scanner beeped. Multiple contacts incoming. Not droids this time. Organic signatures. Jedi signatures, if his analysis of their bioelectric fields was correct. Oh, come on, Rick muttered. Can't these space monks take a hint? 3 Republic gunships descended toward the crash site, and from them emerged not just Obi-Wan and Anakin, but also Ahsoka Tano, Anakin's Padawan, and a full squad of clone troopers led by Captain Rex. They approached in diplomatic formation, weapons holstered, hands visible, body language carefully non-threatening. Obi-Wan stepped forward. Rick Sanchez, the Jedi Council formally requests a dialogue. We believe we have information you'll find relevant. Rick didn't look up from his work. Let me guess. You checked on the chips. Found out I was right. Now you're here to thank me and ask for help exposing whoever's running this operation. He adjusted a crystal array. Answers still no. Even if we told you that we found evidence suggesting the Sith are behind this conspiracy. Obi-Wan pressed. That the entire war is orchestrated by a dark side user with access to the highest levels of Republic authority? Especially then. Sith, Jedi, Republic, Separatists, you're all just factions in a galactic power struggle. Not my business. Anakin stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. You told me about the chips. You gave me the scanner. You involved yourself. You don't get to just walk away now. Rick finally stopped working. He turned to face Anakin, and his expression was colder than the void between stars. Kid, I gave you information. What you do with it is your choice. That's not involvement. That's handing you a tool and watching you decide whether to build something or stab yourself with it. He pointed at the assembled Jedi and clones. You want me to fight your war? Solve your conspiracy? Save your republic? Not happening. I've played hero in more dimensions than you can count, and it always ends the same way, badly. Then why tell us anything? Ahsoka spoke up, her voice carrying the earnest conviction of youth. If you don't care, why warn us at all? Rick looked at the young Togruta, and for just a moment, something like pain crossed his features. Because you remind me of someone. Someone I failed because I thought I knew better than everyone else. He turned back to his work. Don't make me regret basic human decency. Captain Rex stepped forward, removing his helmet. His face, identical to millions of his brothers, was marked by experience that went beyond programming. Sir, if what you said is true about the chips, then my brothers and I are walking time bombs. We deserve to know the truth. We deserve the choice you keep talking about. Rick studied Rex for a long moment. Then he pulled out another neural scanner and tossed it to the captain. There's your truth, Captain. Check every clone you trust. Remove the chips if you can, but do it quietly. Whoever programmed Order 66 is watching for exactly that kind of investigation. Rick studied Rex for a long moment. Then he pulled out another neural scanner and tossed it to the captain. There's your truth, Captain. Check every clone you trust. Remove the chips if you can, but do it quietly. Whoever programmed Order 66 is watching for exactly that kind of investigation. Rex caught the device, staring at it like it was a detonator. Why help us? Because clones didn't choose to be weapons. You're victims of the same conspiracy. If you want agency, start by removing the thing that can override your will. Rick's voice was softer, almost gentle. But don't expect me to hold your hand through the process. You're soldiers. Figure it out. Obi-Wan approached carefully, his diplomatic training in full effect. Rick, I understand your reluctance. But you have knowledge we need. About who's orchestrating this war, about the Sith, about your Chancellor being Darth Sidious? Rick interrupted casually. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. Palpatine is the Sith Lord. He created both sides of the war. He's been manipulating you for years. Your Jedi precognition is clouded because he's literally sitting in the Senate building projecting dark side energy. And your order is so caught up in bureaucracy and dogma that you can't see the obvious. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the Force seemed to hold its breath. You have proof. Mace Windu's voice crackled through Obi-Wan's comlink. The Council Master had been listening remotely. I have pattern recognition, historical analysis, and basic deductive reasoning. Your Chancellor has emergency powers that keep expanding, a war that never quite ends, and access to military command that would make executing Order 66 trivial. Plus, I hacked his private server. Guy keeps Sith holocrons in his office like it's a fucking trophy case. Rick pulled up a holographic display showing encrypted files. Here. Data dump. Everything I pulled from Republic networks, Senate communications, Kaminoan records, Separatist command protocols, and Palpatine's personal correspondence with Count Dooku. Enjoy. My gift to the galaxy. The hologram materialized, and with it, the truth the Jedi had been blind to for years. Evidence of manipulation, conspiracy, and betrayal that went to the core of the Republic itself. Obi-Wan stared at the data, his Jedi composure cracking. If this is accurate, then we've been fighting for the enemy. Bingo. Gold star for the space wizard. Rick returned to his particle accelerator. Now you've got your proof. Go arrest your Chancellor, execute him for treason, try to salvage your Republic. I'll be leaving in about 20 hours. We're done here. But they weren't done. Because on Coruscant, Darth Sidious felt the disturbance, not in the Force, but in his carefully monitored intelligence networks. Someone had breached his security. Someone had stolen data that could unravel everything. The time for observation was over. Rick Sanchez had become a threat that required elimination. And Sidious had resources even the Jedi didn't know existed. In the depths of Coruscant's industrial district, far beneath the gleaming Senate towers and Jedi Temple, a secure facility hummed with dark purpose. Here, in laboratories that existed in no official records, Darth Sidious had spent decades preparing contingencies for every conceivable threat. Experimental weapons. Forbidden technologies. And subjects who'd been transformed into something more, and less, than human. The hologram of Count Dooku flickered to life in the facility's command center. My master, the stranger has exposed our plans to the Jedi Council. They now have evidence of our manipulation of both Republic and Separatist forces. Sidious stood in shadow, his voice measured and cold. Yes, I'm aware. A complication, but not catastrophic. The Jedi will debate, investigate, and argue amongst themselves about proper procedure. By the time they act, our preparations will be complete. He paused. However, this Rick Sanchez has proven more disruptive than anticipated. His technology is genuine. His knowledge extensive. And most concerning, he exists beyond the Force's influence, which means I cannot predict or manipulate him. Then we eliminate him, Dooku replied simply. I can dispatch Grievous with sufficient forces to. No. Conventional military force has already failed. We need something unexpected. Something he cannot analyze and counter with his technology. Sidious's yellow eyes gleamed in the darkness. Activate Project Chimera. Send them to Christophis. Dooku's hologram betrayed rare surprise. Master, those subjects are unstable. If they're deployed and captured, they won't be captured. They're conditioned for suicide rather than surrender. Sidious's smile was a slash of cruelty. And if this Rick is as intelligent as he appears, he'll appreciate the irony of being killed by science rather than mysticism. The hologram blinked out. Deep within the facility, containment cells opened. What emerged had once been sentient beings, humans, aliens, even a failed Jedi, but Sidious's experimentations had transformed them into biological weapons. Enhanced with cybernetics, pumped full of combat stimulants, and programmed with singular purpose, terminate the target at any cost. On Christophis, Rick was unaware of the approaching threat. He was too focused on the moral crisis currently unfolding in his crash site. The Jedi had withdrawn to their forward operating base, taking Rick's data dump with them. Now Captain Rex stood with his most trusted brothers, Fives, Echo, Jesse, and Kix, the squad medic, staring at neural scans that showed the biochips in their heads. This can't be right, Five said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. We'd know if something was in our heads. We'd feel it. Designed not to be noticed, Kix explained, his medical training warring with the horror of what he was seeing. It's integrated with our neural tissue. Organic components, minimal technological signature. We'd never detect it without specifically looking. Rex turned the neural scanner over in his hands, the weight of command pressing down on him. He'd led men into battles across 100 worlds. He'd watched brothers die, had given orders that sent them to their deaths. But this was different. This was the revelation that every choice he'd made might not have been his own. Can it be removed? He asked quietly. Kix studied the scans. Maybe. Requires surgery. Delicate surgery. One wrong cut and we could cause brain damage, paralysis, or death. He looked at Rex. But if we don't remove them, and this Order 66 activates, then we become the Jedi's executioners, Rex finished. Whether we want to or not. Rick had been listening from 30 meters away while pretending to calibrate his particle accelerator. He'd promised himself no involvement. Promised he'd fix his ship and leave these people to their fate. It was the smart move. The safe move. The move he'd made 1,000 times across 1,000 dimensions. Surgical droid, ERP Mark IV or better, Rick called out without looking up. Precision microtools, neural mapping software, and about 6 hours per clone if you want to do it safely. Oh, and local anesthetic that doesn't interfere with neural activity. Your standard battlefield med kits won't cut it. Rex approached slowly. You're saying you know how to remove them? I'm saying I know the ERP general medical principles of extracting cybernetic components from organic neural tissue. Done it on myself about 40 times, admittedly for different reasons. Rick finally turned around, and his expression was uncharacteristically serious. But I'm not a surgeon, Captain. I'm a scientist who happens to have cybernetic enhancements and a working knowledge of neuroscience. There's a difference. But you could guide Kix. Tell him what to do. Rick sighed, a sound of a man watching his resolve crumble in real time. Yeah. Probably. If your medic's any good and you've got decent equipment. He took a long drink from his flask. God damn it. I'm getting involved. I'm actually getting ERP involved in a space opera. This is a new low even for me. Why? Fives asked. You said you didn't care about our war. I don't. But I care about bodily autonomy and informed consent. Those chips violate both. Rick pulled up a holographic display showing neural architecture. Alright, listen up. Here's how this works. The chip interfaces with your inhibitory neurons, the parts of your brain that regulate impulse control and moral decision-making. When Order 66 activates, it floods those regions with neurochemical signals that override your conscious will. You'll want to kill the Jedi. You'll feel like it's the right thing to do. That's not mind control, that's worse. That's making you complicit in your own betrayal. The clones exchanged glances. Each man processing the horror of that statement. To be forced to commit murder was one thing. To be made to believe it was righteous while doing it, that was a violation that went beyond the physical. So we remove them, Jesse said firmly. All of us. Every clone in the Grand Army. Can't, Rick replied bluntly. You've got 3 million clones across the galaxy. Even if you had the equipment and expertise, which you don't, the scale is impossible. Best you can do is remove chips from soldiers you personally trust, create a core group with actual free will, and pray that's enough when the hammer falls. That's not good enough, Rex said. My brothers deserve. Your brothers deserve a lot of things, Captain. Doesn't mean they'll get them. That's life in an unjust universe. Rick's voice softened slightly. Look, you want my advice? Start with your immediate unit. Remove chips from the men you trust absolutely. Then those men remove chips from men they trust. Create a network of free-willed clones who can think independently when Order 66 activates. It won't save everyone, but it'll save some. Sometimes, some is the best you can hope for. Kix was already pulling up medical equipment requisitions on his datapad. I can get a surgical droid from the medical bay. The new models have precision manipulators designed for field brain surgery, for treating head trauma in combat zones. Good. Bring it here. We'll start with you, Captain. Rick pointed at Rex. You're the ranking officer. If the procedure goes wrong and you die, your men can still execute the plan. If I start with someone else and they die, Rex has to live with ordering a procedure that killed his brother. Trust me, that kind of guilt fucks you up long term. Rex removed his helmet, meeting Rick's bloodshot eyes with absolute clarity. I'm ready. No, you're not. Nobody's ready to have their brain operated on. But we're doing it anyway. Rick pulled out a bottle of clear liquid from his lab coat. Drink this. It's a neural stabilizer I synthesized from local compounds. Will keep your brain activity consistent during the procedure, reduce inflammation, and, most importantly, keep you conscious so we know if we hit something we shouldn't. Conscious? Rex took the bottle hesitantly. During brain surgery? Your skull's the only thing getting cut. The brain itself doesn't have pain receptors. You'll feel pressure, maybe some weird sensations, but not agony. Rick grinned, a manic expression that didn't inspire confidence. Although if you hear colors or smell philosophy, let us know. That means we nicked something important. The surgical droid arrived 20 minutes later. Kix had requisitioned the most advanced model available, an FX-7 with 9 arms and medical programming updated with the latest techniques. Rick spent 10 minutes hacking its programming to incorporate his own procedures, muttering in languages the droid's database didn't recognize. Alright, Captain. Lie down, think peaceful thoughts, and try not to move when we're poking around in your cerebral cortex. Rex lay on a makeshift surgical table, his brothers surrounding him in silent support. The droid's arms moved with mechanical precision, a laser scalpel cutting through his scalp in a thin line. Rick stood beside Kix, pointing at the holographic neural map, calling out depths and angles with absolute certainty. 2 millimeters left. There's a major vein cluster, clip it, don't cut it. Now micromanipulator arm 3, grab the chip's edge. It's got anchoring filaments extending into the surrounding tissue, those need to be severed individually or you'll tear neural pathways. Kix's hands were steady, but sweat beaded on his forehead. How many filaments? 37. Give or take. Depends on how long it's been in there. Rick pulled up a magnified view. See that pulsing section? That's the chip's power source, bioelectric generator using the host's neural activity. Clever, actually. Self-sustaining, no batteries required. Makes it almost undetectable. Almost, Kix muttered, his manipulator arms carefully severing filaments under the droid's guidance. Well, yeah. I detected it in about 5 seconds, but I'm me. Rick watched the procedure with the detached fascination of someone who'd seen far stranger things. You're doing good, medic. Steady hands. Better than half the surgeons I've dealt with across the multiverse, and I've been operated on by crystalline hive minds with 20 appendages. 20 minutes into the surgery, Rex spoke, his voice slightly slurred from the neural stabilizer. I can feel it. The chip. Like there's something in my head that doesn't belong. That's your brain's spatial awareness compensating for the removal, Rick explained. You're literally feeling the absence of something that's been there since before you were conscious. It'll fade once the chip's out and your neurons remap. Will I be different? After? Rick considered the question seriously. You'll be you. Maybe more you, without the external influence. But Rex, you were always you. The chip didn't make your personality or your choices. It was just waiting to override them. Removing it doesn't change who you are. It just guarantees that who you are stays who you are. The final filament severed. Kix's manipulator arm lifted the chip free, a tiny piece of organic technology that had held the power to turn loyal soldiers into executioners. He placed it in a containment field, where it pulsed weakly, still trying to fulfill its programming. Seal the incision, Rick instructed. Synthetic skin graft, neural growth accelerant, and about 24 hours of rest. He'll have a headache like he got drunk on Corellian whiskey and fought a Wookiee, but he'll live. Kix worked quickly, sealing Rex's scalp with practiced efficiency. When it was done, Rex sat up slowly, his hand moving to his head. I feel lighter. Like something I didn't know was pressing down on me is gone. That's freedom, Captain, Rick said quietly. Enjoy it while it lasts. The procedure was repeated 4 more times, Fives, Echo, Jesse, and Kix himself, with Rex assisting on the final surgery despite his headache. Each time, Rick provided guidance, corrected mistakes before they became catastrophic, and gradually taught Kix the technique well enough that he could perform it independently. By the time the sun set over Christophis' crystal plains, 5 clone troopers stood free of their programming. 5 men who could now face Order 66 and choose their own response. This is just the beginning, Rex said, looking at his brothers. We need to spread this. Quietly. Every battalion, every company. Give our brothers a choice. Gonna be dangerous, Rick warned. Whoever's monitoring this conspiracy will notice if chip removal becomes widespread. They'll move up their timeline, activate Order 66 early, or just start killing clones who know too much. Then we move faster, Five said, his voice hard with determination. We're soldiers. Dangerous is what we do. Rick nodded, turning back to his particle accelerator. Good luck with that. I'll be gone in about 18 hours. You'll be on your own. But even as he said it, Rick's scanners were detecting something approaching Christophis. Multiple contacts, moving through hyperspace with military precision. Not Republic. Not Separatist. Something else. The scanner's threat assessment flashed red, unknown hostile forces. Extreme danger. Well, shit, Rick muttered. Looks like somebody doesn't want me leaving after all. In orbit, 6 unmarked stealth ships dropped out of hyperspace. Their cargo bays opened, releasing drop pods that screamed through the atmosphere toward the crash site. Inside each pod, a Project Chimera subject waited, enhanced, programmed, and utterly expendable. Darth Sidious had sent his monsters. And Rick Sanchez was about to learn that even his technology had limits when faced with enemies designed specifically to kill someone like him. Rick's proximity alarms screamed warnings 3 seconds before the first drop pod cratered the ground 50 meters from his ship. The impact sent crystalline shrapnel exploding outward in a deadly spray that would have shredded anyone standing nearby. Rick, who'd already activated a localized force field the moment his scanners registered the atmospheric entry, watched the explosion with annoyed fascination. Ship, analysis of incoming hostiles. Biological signatures heavily modified with cybernetic enhancement, the AI reported. Combat stimulants detected, adrenaline analogs, pain suppressors, berserker compounds. Preliminary assessment, enhanced shock troops designed for close-quarters termination. Rick, these aren't standard military assets. Yeah, I can see that. Rick pulled out his particle beam weapon with one hand and something that looked like a modified grenade with the other. Somebody sent custom-built assassins. That's either flattering or insulting, and I haven't decided which yet. The drop pod's door blew outward with explosive force. What emerged had once been human, a man, based on the underlying bone structure, but extensive augmentation had transformed him into something else. Cybernetic limbs replaced flesh, armor plating covered vital areas, and his eyes glowed with the red light of combat stims and neural programming. He carried no conventional weapons. His body was the weapon. Target acquired, the assassin said in a voice that was half organic, half synthesizer. Rick Sanchez. Termination authorized. He moved with inhuman speed, covering 20 meters in seconds. Rick didn't bother dodging, he just pressed the button on his grenade and tossed it casually. The device detonated mid-air, but instead of shrapnel, it released a burst of electromagnetic energy that should have fried every cybernetic component in the assassin's body. Should have. The assassin stumbled, sparks erupting from his joints, but kept coming. His cybernetics were shielded, hardened against EMP attacks. Military grade, Rick noted. Possibly better. Someone had spent serious resources building these killers. Okay, Plan B. Rick fired his particle beam weapon. The assassin's chest armor absorbed the blast, not deflected, absorbed. Some kind of energy-dispersing material that spread the molecular disruption across its surface instead of letting it penetrate. The armor glowed white-hot but held. The assassin's fist came at Rick's head with enough force to crack concrete. Rick's personal shield intercepted it, energy crackling where enhanced flesh met dimensional barrier. The impact sent both combatants sliding backward across crystal formations. Interesting, Rick muttered, analyzing the armor's composition through his scanner even while backpedaling. Energy resistant, impact resistant, probably resistant to most conventional weapons. But I'm guessing whoever built you didn't account for unconventional weapons. He pulled out a device that looked like a TV remote crossed with a barcode scanner and pointed it at the assassin. The device hummed, and suddenly the assassin's cybernetic enhancements began operating in reverse. Servos contracted instead of extended, neural interfaces sent pain signals instead of suppressors, and combat stims became sedatives. Hacked your internal systems, Rick explained as the assassin collapsed, convulsing. Your body's trying to enhance you while I'm telling it to shut down. Creates a fun feedback loop that. The second drop pod hit. And the third. And the fourth. 5 more assassins emerged, each with different augmentations, different weapons, different approaches. But all with the same glowing red eyes and singular purpose. Oh, come on, Rick complained, already moving. Can't even monologue anymore. This galaxy has no respect for dramatic exposition. From the Republic forward base, Obi-Wan Kenobi felt the disturbance even before the explosions registered on sensors. Violence. Death. And that strange absence where Rick existed, now surrounded by presences that felt wrong in the Force, twisted, corrupted, more machine than living being. General, we're detecting multiple hostile contacts at the crash site, Commander Cody reported. Unknown configuration. They're engaging the target, Rick Sanchez. Anakin was already moving toward the gunships. We need to help him. Do we? Obi-Wan asked carefully. He's refused alliance, refused assistance. Perhaps we should let this situation resolve itself. Anakin spun, anger flashing across his features. He gave us the information about the chips. He helped Rex and his men. We can't just abandon him. He's also holding technology that could be used against the Republic, Obi-Wan countered, though his tone suggested he was playing devil's advocate rather than stating conviction. And he's made it clear he intends to leave regardless of our needs. Captain Rex, still recovering from his surgery but refusing to stay down, stepped forward. His helmet was off, his expression hard. General Kenobi, with respect, that man saved my brothers from being programmed weapons. We owe him. Obi-Wan studied Rex's face, seeing the subtle changes that came with true free will rather than programmed loyalty. The captain had always been independent-minded, but now there was something different in his eyes. Choice. Agency. The knowledge that his thoughts were his own. You're right, Captain, Obi-Wan said finally. And we are Jedi. We don't abandon people simply because they're difficult. He ignited his lightsaber. Anakin, Rex, with me. Cody, secure the perimeter. If those attackers break through, I want them contained, not escaped. The gunship screamed toward the crash site, arriving to find a battlefield that looked like physics had taken a vacation. Rick was darting between assassins, each movement calculated, each weapon deployment precise. But he was being overwhelmed by sheer numbers and their adaptive tactics. One assassin wielded what appeared to be a sonic disruptor, a weapon designed to shatter molecular bonds through resonance. Rick's shields absorbed 2 shots before starting to destabilize. Another assassin had projectile weapons that fired rounds that quantum tunneled through barriers, appearing on the other side without passing through the intervening space, the same technology Rick had mentioned earlier, now turned against him. "Your shields are failing," one assassin announced with mechanical precision. "Surrender, and termination will be swift." "Counter-offer," Rick shouted, ducking a blast that vaporized a crystal formation behind him. "You tell me who sent you, and I'll kill you quickly instead of painfully." "Oh wait, you're programmed not to surrender." "Forgot about that. My bad." The Jedi gunship descended, and Obi-Wan and Anakin leaped out while it was still 10 meters up, landing with Force-enhanced grace. Their lightsabers ignited, blue blades cutting through the chaos with elegant precision. "Rick Sanchez," Obi-Wan called out, deflecting a shot meant for the scientist. "It appears you require assistance after all." "I require you space wizards to stay out of my way," Rick snapped back, firing his particle beam at an assassin who was trying to flank him. "These guys are enhanced specifically to counter my tech. Your laser swords aren't gonna." An assassin charged Anakin with vibroblades extended from his forearms. Anakin's lightsaber intercepted the first blade, but the second came in low, forcing the Jedi to leap backward. The assassin pressed the advantage, moving with speed that matched Anakin's force-enhanced reflexes. "They're fast," Anakin grunted, parrying a strike that would have disemboweled him. "And they don't feel pain." "Combat stims and pain suppressors," Rick explained, still fighting his own battles. "Plus cybernetic response times that bypass normal neural lag. They're basically wetware combat droids with organic cores. Kill them like you'd kill anything else, destroy critical systems." Obi-Wan engaged 2 assassins simultaneously, his Sorisu defensive style keeping their attacks at bay while he analyzed their patterns. Obi-Wan engaged 2 assassins simultaneously, his Sorisu defensive style keeping their attacks at bay while he analyzed their patterns. "They're coordinating. Each one covering the other's weaknesses." "Of course they are. Networked neural systems. They're basically one distributed intelligence in 6 bodies." Rick tossed another device. This one released a pulse that temporarily disrupted the neural network. The assassins stumbled, their coordination broken for precious seconds. Anakin seized the opportunity, using the Force to hurl an assassin into a crystal formation with bone-breaking force. The impact shattered cybernetics and organic components alike. The assassin tried to rise, servos whining, but its spine was compromised. It collapsed, still trying to crawl toward its target with single-minded determination. "They don't stop," Anakin observed with horror. "Even dying, they're still trying to complete their mission." "Programmed loyalty taken to its logical extreme," Rick said darkly. "Sound familiar, Captain?" Rex and his squad had joined the fight, their blasters targeting cybernetic joints and sensor arrays, the weak points Rick had transmitted to their HUDs. The clones fought with the practiced efficiency of soldiers who'd survived 100 battles, but there was something different now. They weren't just following orders. They were choosing to fight. "Focus fire on the one with the sonic disruptor," Rex commanded. "That weapon's threatening our position. Jesse, Echo, flank and suppress. Fives, with me." The clones moved like a machine, but one driven by will rather than programming. Their shots found targets, disabled threats, created openings for the Jedi to exploit. In under 3 minutes, 4 assassins were down, their enhanced bodies too damaged to continue fighting. But the remaining 2 were adapting. They'd analyzed their opponent's tactics, compensated for weaknesses, and shifted strategy. One focused entirely on Rick, pressing him with quantum tunneling projectiles that his shields couldn't stop. The other engaged the Jedi and clones with brutal efficiency, trading damage for kills, accepting injury to deliver fatal strikes. Rick was bleeding from a shoulder wound where a projectile had materialized inside his shield perimeter. His lab coat was scorched. His flask had been shot and was leaking alcohol across the crystal ground. He looked furious. "All right, I'm done being nice." He pulled out a device that looked disturbingly like a miniature black hole generator. "Ship, confirm no civilian populations within blast radius." "Confirmed," the AI responded. "However, Rick, that weapon will destabilize local spacetime. Potential for catastrophic." Yeah, butterfly effect, temporal paradox, heat death of the universe. Heard it before. Rick aimed at the assassin charging him. "But right now, I'm bleeding, pissed off, and out of clever solutions. So we're going with, fuck physics." He fired. The effect was localized but devastating. A sphere of compressed spacetime formed around the assassin, and within that sphere, gravity increased to crushing intensity. The assassin's cybernetics groaned, then crumpled. His organic components fared no better. In 3 seconds, a highly enhanced super soldier had been compressed into a sphere roughly the size of a basketball. The gravitational distortion collapsed, and the sphere fell to the ground with a wet, metallic thud. Everyone stopped fighting to stare at it. "What?" Obi-Wan's voice trailed off, his Jedi training struggling to process what he'd just witnessed. "What was that?" "Localized singularity generator. Creates a temporary micro-black hole, crushes everything in its field, then collapses before it can cascade into galaxy-eating event horizon." Rick holstered the weapon casually, though he was swaying slightly from blood loss. "Not my favorite tool. Bit too permanent. But effective." The final assassin calculated odds, analyzed outcomes, and made the only logical choice his programming allowed: martyrdom. He triggered a self-destruct mechanism built into his cybernetics, a thermal detonator powerful enough to vaporize everything within 50 meters. Anakin felt the danger through the Force. "Everyone down." He reached out with the Force, creating a barrier between the explosion and the assembled group. The thermal detonator detonated, releasing enough energy to glass the surrounding crystal formations. Anakin's Force barrier held, but the strain was immense. Blood vessels burst in his eyes from the effort. His knees buckled. Then Rick was there, his own dimensional shields reinforcing Anakin's Force protection. 2 different types of reality manipulation, one mystical, one scientific, working in concert to contain an explosion that should have killed them all. When the blast faded, Anakin collapsed, gasping. Rick stumbled backward, his shields flickering out, his devices sparking and smoking from overload. "Not bad, kid," Rick said, breathing hard. "For a space wizard." "You're welcome," Anakin managed, accepting Obi-Wan's hand to stand. "For saving your life. I was fine. Had it under control. You were bleeding and surrounded. Tactical retreat is a valid strategy." "You're insufferable," Obi-Wan said, but there was almost fondness in his tone. "And you owe us an explanation. Those assassins, someone sent them specifically for you. Someone with resources that exceed Separatist standard operations." Rick looked at the carnage surrounding his crash site, 6 enhanced soldiers, dead or disabled, sent to kill one-dimensional traveler. The resources required to build, train, and deploy them suggested serious backing. Military. Government. Or Sith. "Your Chancellor," Rick said quietly. "Palpatine. He's the one who sent them. Had to be. Nobody else in this dimension has the resources or motivation to build custom anti-Rick assassins in." He checked his scanner, "Less than 6 hours since I dumped his conspiracy data." "The Chancellor wouldn't," Obi-Wan began automatically, then stopped. The evidence was mounting. The chips. The conspiracy. The manipulated war. And now assassins that felt wrong in the Force, like they'd been touched by darkness. He would, Anakin said quietly, his hand moving unconsciously to his lightsaber. If Rick's right about everything else, then he'd absolutely eliminate threats to his plans. Rex approached, studying one of the dead assassins. Sir, these aren't registered in any Republic military database. Their augmentations aren't standard. This is Black Ops. The kind that doesn't officially exist. Rick was already packing up his equipment, moving despite his injury. His particle accelerator hummed, nearly complete. Well, this has been fun, but I'm officially accelerating my departure timeline. Can't build dimensional portal tech while dodging Sith assassins every 6 hours. You can't leave, Obi-Wan said. Not a command. A statement of fact. Not now. You've become part of this. Whether you wanted to or not. Watch me, Rick replied, pressing controls on his ship. Portal guns at 98%. Give me 2 more hours and I'm gone. Back to my dimension, where the existential threats are at least familiar. And what about us? Ahsoka had arrived late to the fight, but she'd seen enough. The young Padawan stood between Rick and his ship, her expression fierce. You've exposed a conspiracy, started removing clone programming, and made yourself an enemy of the most powerful man in the galaxy. You really think you can just leave us to deal with the consequences? Rick met her eyes, young, idealistic, burning with conviction. Just like Summer had been before he'd ruined everything between them. He looked away. Not my problem, kid. The Force connects all living things, Ahsoka pressed. By helping us, you became part of that connection. You can feel it, can't you? That leaving now would be wrong. I don't feel the Force. I exist outside your mystical energy field, remember? But Rick's voice lacked its usual certainty. Maybe, Ahsoka said softly. But you feel guilt. I can see it. Whatever happened in your past, whoever you failed, this is your chance to not fail again. The silence stretched. Rick's hand hovered over his ship's entry panel. He could be inside in seconds, accelerate the portal gun's final calibration, and vanish into the multiverse. Leave the Star Wars galaxy to its fate. It was the smart move. The safe move. The move that wouldn't cost him anything he couldn't afford to lose. He looked at Rex and his brothers, free men because Rick had cared enough to give them the truth. At Anakin, a kid drowning in prophecy who needed to hear that choices mattered more than destiny. At Obi-Wan, a diplomat soldier trying to serve a republic that was already dead. At Ahsoka, young, hopeful, about to have that hope shattered if Palpatine's plan succeeded. God damn it, Rick muttered. I'm gonna regret this. I'm gonna regret this so much. He turned away from his ship. Alright, space wizards. You want my help? Fine. But we do this my way. No Jedi Council debates, no Senate oversight, no bureaucratic bullshit. We take down Palpatine before he can execute Order 66, we expose his conspiracy, and then I leave. Deal? Obi-Wan and Anakin exchanged glances. What Rick was proposing was treason. Assassinating the Supreme Chancellor without trial, without evidence presented to the Senate, without following any legal procedure. It violated everything the Jedi stood for. It was also probably the only way to stop a Sith Lord who controlled both sides of the war. Deal, Anakin said immediately. Obi-Wan hesitated, then nodded. Deal. But Rick, if we're wrong about him. We're not. Rick pulled up a holographic display showing energy signatures from the dead assassins. These guys have traces of dark side corruption in their cybernetics. Not Force-sensitive themselves, but exposed to it during creation. And there's only one person in your Republic with the power, resources, and motivation to build them. Then we plan, Obi-Wan said, his voice carrying the weight of command. Carefully. We get one chance at this. Rick grinned, manic, dangerous, and utterly committed. Oh, I've got a plan. You're not gonna like it. It's gonna be dangerous, morally questionable, and probably get some of us killed. He took a drink from a backup flask. But it'll be fun as hell. Above Christophis, more ships were entering the system. Not Republic. Not Separatist. Dooku's personal fleet, drawn by reports of unusual activity. The Sith Lord had come to investigate the anomaly personally. And in the Senate building on Coruscant, Darth Sidious felt his assassins die through their connection to his dark side rituals. He smiled. The stranger had survived, but he'd revealed himself. Shown his capabilities. Made allies. All data points. All useful. Soon, Sidious whispered to the darkness. Very soon, Mr. Sanchez, you'll learn that in this galaxy, the Sith always win. Count Dooku's solar sailor descended through Christophis' atmosphere with the elegant menace of a predator surveying prey. The Sith Lord stood at the viewport, his aristocratic features composed, his presence in the Force calm and controlled. Behind him, a contingent of his best droids waited, not battle droids, but elite guards and tactical units built for precision operations. My lord, his tactical droid reported, were detecting Republic forces concentrated at the crash site. Jedi signatures confirmed, Kenobi and Skywalker. The stranger, Rick Sanchez, remains present. Excellent, Dooku murmured. I shall speak with him myself. I shall speak with him myself. After all, someone who exists beyond the Force's touch is rare enough to warrant personal attention. At the crash site, Rick was explaining his plan to an increasingly horrified audience of Jedi and clone troopers. So let me get this straight, Obi-Wan said carefully, his diplomatic training working overtime. Your plan is to broadcast Palpatine's conspiracy evidence across every HoloNet channel in the galaxy simultaneously, effectively declaring him a Sith Lord to trillions of beings, and then, while the galaxy is in chaos, assault the Senate building and either capture or kill him before his security forces can respond. Yep. That's the gist. Rick was working on a modified transmitter that would punch through any encryption or jamming. Simple, direct, minimal variables. My favorite kind of plan. That's not a plan, Anakin said, though he sounded more excited than critical. That's barely even a strategy. That's just controlled chaos. Kid, you say that like it's a bad thing. Chaos is great. Chaos means your enemy can't predict your moves because you haven't predicted them yourself yet. Rick pointed at the holographic display showing Coruscant's infrastructure. Your Palpatine's been playing four-dimensional chess for decades. Every contingency planned, every response calculated. But you know what four-dimensional chess players hate? Someone who flips the board and starts playing interdimensional checkers. Master, Ahsoka said quietly to Anakin, I think I understand why the Council is concerned about him. The Council isn't here, Anakin replied, his voice carrying an edge. And they've been debating what to do about Palpatine for hours. By the time they reach consensus, Order 66 will activate and we'll all be dead. Obi-Wan stroked his beard, the gesture betraying his internal conflict. There's wisdom in caution, Anakin. One does not simply accuse the Supreme Chancellor of being a Sith Lord without. Without what? Evidence. We have it. Opportunity. We have that too. The Force's blessing. Anakin's voice rose with frustration he'd been containing for years. The Force has been clouded for the entire war, Master. Maybe it's time we stopped waiting for cosmic permission and started making our own choices. Rick paused his work, looking at Anakin with something approaching respect. Ha! There's hope for you yet, kid. Most people in your position would cling to institutional authority even when it's obviously failing them. I've never been good at following rules, Anakin admitted. I noticed. That's why you're married to a senator in direct violation of your order's code, regularly use anger to fuel your combat effectiveness, and have a concerning habit of force-choking people who piss you off. Rick grinned at Anakin's shocked expression. Relax. I'm not judging. I've done way worse for way dumber reasons. Just pointing out that you're already playing fast and loose with Jedi orthodoxy. Might as well commit. Before Anakin could respond, Rex's comlink crackled with urgency. General Skywalker, we have incoming. One ship, minimal escort, landing 300 meters from your position. Signature matches Count Dooku's personal vessel. The temperature seemed to drop. Every Jedi present felt the dark side presence approaching, elegant, controlled, ancient in its malevolence. Obi-Wan's hand moved to his lightsaber. Anakin's face hardened with barely suppressed rage. Dooku, Anakin growled. Finally. I've wanted a rematch since he took my arm. Stand down, Anakin, Obi-Wan commanded. We don't know why he's here. This could be a diplomatic overture from the Separatists. Or it could be another assassination attempt, Rick said, his scanners analyzing the approaching ship. His vessel's got weapon systems that could glass this entire area. But they're not charging. He's coming to talk. Rick's expression turned predatory. Good. I've got some questions for the Sith Lord who's been playing both sides. You're not serious, Obi-Wan said. You can't just interrogate Count Dooku. Watch me. Count Dooku emerged from his solar sailor alone, his cape flowing behind him with theatrical elegance. His lightsaber hung at his side, but his hands were empty, open in a gesture of temporary truce. He walked across the crystal plains like he owned them, his dark side presence rippling through the Force like oil on water. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Dooku said warmly, as if greeting an old friend rather than an enemy. Anakin Skywalker. I see you've both survived the war's latest complications. How fortunate. Dooku. Obi-Wan's voice was ice. You have approximately 5 seconds to explain your presence before we arrest you for war crimes. Arrest? Dear boy, you're standing in neutral territory with insufficient forces to contain me, and we both know it. Dooku's eyes shifted to Rick, who was leaning against his ship with calculated casualness. But I'm not here for you, old friend. I'm here to speak with Mr. Rick Sanchez. The gentleman who's caused such interesting disruptions to our orderly war. Rick took a drink from his flask, studying Dooku with the analytical gaze of someone dissecting a lab specimen. Let me guess. Your master sent assassins, they failed, so now you're here to negotiate. Either recruit me to the separatist cause or eliminate me more personally. How's that for prediction? Dooku's eyebrow raised fractionally, the only sign of surprise he allowed himself. Remarkably accurate. Though I'd frame it differently. I'm here to offer you truth. My master, yes, I serve Darth Sidious, that much you've deduced correctly, believes you're a threat to be eliminated. I, however, believe you're a resource to be utilized. Not interested in being anyone's resource, Rick said flatly. Even if the alternative is assisting a republic that's already dead. A Jedi Order clinging to dogma while the galaxy burns. Dooku stepped closer, his voice dropping to intimate persuasion. Mr. Sanchez, you strike me as a practical man. Brilliant, cynical, unburdened by sentiment. Surely you see that the Republic is corrupt beyond salvation. The Jedi have become generals rather than peacekeepers. The Senate is paralyzed by bureaucracy. The galaxy needs order. Structure. My master offers that. Your master offers fascism with a Force user on top, Rick replied. I've seen this play before, Dooku. Charismatic leader promises to fix broken system, accumulates absolute power, turns galaxy into authoritarian nightmare. Happens in about 40% of dimensions I visit. Gets boring after a while. Dooku's expression flickered, genuine curiosity breaking through aristocratic composure. Dimensions. Yes, my master mentioned you claim interdimensional origin. Fascinating. If true, you've seen societies beyond our comprehension. Surely some were ruled effectively through centralized authority. Sure. And I've seen just as many where democracy worked, anarcho-syndicalism thrived, or hive minds achieved post-scarcity utopia. Point is, there's no universal solution. Your master's plan works if your goal is consolidating power. Less good if your goal is minimizing suffering or maximizing freedom. Freedom is a luxury of stable societies, Dooku countered. The galaxy is at war. Trillions suffer while senators debate and Jedi meditate. Action is required. Action you and your master manufactured. Rick pushed off from his ship, walking toward Dooku with zero fear. You created both sides of this war. The separatist movement, the clone army, the political crisis, all orchestrated to justify emergency powers and authoritarian takeover. It's not even creative. It's just Reichstag fire meets Order 66. For the first time, Dooku's composure cracked. His hand moved to his lightsaber, not activating it, but acknowledging the impulse. You speak of things you shouldn't know. Things that could endanger. Could endanger your master's plan? Yeah, that's kind of the point. Rick pulled up a holographic display showing the data he'd stolen. I've got everything, Dooku. Every communication between you and Sidious. Every separatist operation funded through Republic black budgets. Every contingency order programmed into clone brains. And in about, he checked his wrist device, 6 hours, I'm broadcasting it across the entire galaxy. The lightsaber ignited, a crimson blade that hummed with dark side energy. Anakin and Obi-Wan immediately activated their own weapons, blue blades creating a triangle of contained violence. But Dooku wasn't attacking Rick. He was considering. That would be unwise, Dooku said carefully. My master has contingencies. If his identity is exposed prematurely, he will activate Order 66 immediately. Every Jedi in the galaxy will be executed by their own soldiers within hours. Not if we remove the chips first, Rex interjected, his voice hard. We know about the programming. We're already removing it. Dooku's eyes widened fractionally. Impossible. The chips are invisible to standard medical scans. Even if you detected them, removing them requires surgical precision, neural mapping, and about 6 hours per clone, Rick finished. Which means we can't save them all. But we can save enough. Create a core group of free-willed soldiers who can resist Order 66 and protect the Jedi when it activates. The Sith Lord's lightsaber lowered slightly as he calculated probabilities. His master's plan was collapsing. Not catastrophically, Sidious was too brilliant for single points of failure, but enough to require adaptation. And adaptation meant chaos. Chaos meant opportunities. What if, Dooku said slowly, there was a third option? Here it comes, Rick muttered. The betrayal offer. My master is powerful, but he's not infallible. And his vision for the galaxy is, Dooku paused, choosing words carefully. Limited. He sees only Sith dominance, only dark side supremacy. But you, Mr. Sanchez, you could offer something different. Technology that transcends the Force. Knowledge from infinite dimensions. Power that even Sidious fears. You're asking me to help you betray your master and take over the galaxy yourself, Rick said flatly. That's your pitch. I'm suggesting an alliance between someone who understands the Force's potential and someone who exists beyond it. Together, we could reshape this galaxy. No Republic corruption. No Jedi dogma. No Sith tyranny. Just order, efficiency, and progress. Dooku's voice carried genuine passion now. You're a scientist, Mr. Sanchez. Imagine what you could accomplish with an entire galaxy's resources at your disposal. Rick actually considered it. For 3 seconds, he ran probability calculations, outcome projections, and ethical analyses. An alliance with Dooku could neutralize Sidious, prevent Order 66, and potentially create a more functional government than either Republic or Empire would offer. Then he remembered every time he tried to fix the civilization. Every dimension where his interference had caused more harm than good. Every moment of hubris that had cost him relationships, dignity, and pieces of his soul. Counteroffer, Rick said. You tell me where Sidious keeps his Sith holocrons, I give you a 30-second head start before I tell these Jedi where you're going, and we all pretend this conversation never happened. You get to live, I get useful intel, and nobody has to find out you tried to betray your master. Dooku's expression hardened. You're refusing. Even knowing what Sidious will do if you oppose him. I've opposed gods, Dooku. Literal gods with power to reshape reality. Your master's just a really strong psychic with delusions of grandeur and a talent for manipulation. I'm not scared of him. Then you're a fool. Dooku's lightsaber came up in a classic Makashi stance, Form 2, the duelist's form, elegant and deadly. And fools don't survive long in this galaxy. He struck. The crimson blade descended toward Rick's head with force-enhanced speed. Obi-Wan intercepted with Sorisu's defensive precision, while Anakin came in from the side with Jem So's aggressive power. The three lightsabers clashed in a shower of sparks, force and skill meeting in elegant violence. Rick just walked away from the duel, already bored. You space wizards have fun with your laser sword dance. I've got a broadcast to finish. Rick. Ahsoka shouted. A little help would be appreciated. You're Jedi. He's one Sith Lord in his 70s. You got this. Rick was already back at his equipment, calibrating the final transmission parameters. Besides, best way to beat Dooku is to make him monologue. Guy loves hearing himself talk. Just ask him about the failures of democracy or something. He'll go on for 20 minutes. Dooku, currently engaged with both Kenobi and Skywalker simultaneously, somehow found breath to respond, You're remarkably cavalier for someone who's made an enemy of the Sith. I've made enemies of everyone worth making enemies of, Rick called back. It's kind of my thing. The duel intensified. Dooku was a master duelist with decades of experience, his Makashi form designed specifically for lightsaber combat. But Obi-Wan's Sorisu was the perfect defense, and Anakin's Jem So brought overwhelming offense. Together, they pressed the Sith Lord back, their coordination improving as the Force flowed between them. You've improved, young Skywalker, Dooku observed, deflecting a strike that would have taken his head. The last time we dueled, you let anger cloud your judgment. Now you're actually thinking. I've learned a few things, Anakin replied through gritted teeth. Like how to fight without giving in to rage. How disappointing. Rage is power. Rage is honesty. Dooku's blade came dangerously close to Anakin's throat. The dark side offers strength. You're denying yourself out of misplaced loyalty to a failing order. The dark side offers shortcuts, Obi-Wan interjected, his blade intercepting Dooku's. Not solutions. Philosophy from the man whose master was cut down by a Sith. Tell me, Obi-Wan, did Qui-Gon's devotion to the light side save him? Dooku's words were weapons as much as his lightsaber. Did your precious Jedi code resurrect him? Obi-Wan's expression didn't change, but the Force rippled with old pain. Dooku knew how to wound with more than physical blows. Rick watched the duel with half his attention while working on his transmitter. The Jedi were holding their own, but Dooku was skilled enough to escape whenever he decided the fight was unwinnable. Which meant Rick needed to finish his work before the Sith Lord cut his losses and ran. Ship, how's our transmission power? Rick asked. Sufficient to punch through planetary jamming, the AI replied. But galactic broadcast requires access to HoloNet relay stations. Current equipment cannot generate necessary signal strength independently. Then we don't broadcast independently. We hijack. Rick's fingers flew across holographic controls. I've already got backdoor access to Republic military networks. From there, I can bounce our signal through every relay station simultaneously. They'll shut it down eventually, but not before the message reaches trillions of people. Rick, incoming. Rex shouted. Rick looked up to see Dooku's droids finally entering the battle, not attacking the Jedi, but targeting Rick's equipment. The tactical droid had correctly identified the greatest threat, not the lightsaber-wielding space wizards, but the drunk scientist about to expose galactic conspiracy. Rick sighed, pulled out his particle beam weapon, and started disintegrating droids with casual precision. Can't even finish a project without interruptions. This galaxy is exhausting. The battle became chaos, Jedi versus Sith Lord, clones versus droids, and one interdimensional scientist versus basic interruption. Through it all, Rick kept working, his hands assembling components even while dodging blaster fire. And then, with a final keystroke, the transmitter activated. Across the galaxy, every HoloNet terminal, every military communication system, every entertainment broadcast simultaneously displayed the same image, Rick Sanchez, looking directly into the camera with bloodshot eyes and absolute conviction. People of the Star Wars galaxy, Rick began, his voice reaching trillions. My name is Rick Sanchez, and I'm about to ruin your Supreme Chancellor's entire career. What you're about to see is documented evidence that your democracy is dead, your war is fake, and your leader is a Sith Lord who's been playing you all for decades. Buckle up. This is gonna be a rough ride. The data dump began. Files, communications, video evidence, everything Rick had stolen from Republic networks, now displayed for the entire galaxy to witness. On Coruscant, in the Senate building, Darth Sidious felt his careful plans crumble. And he smiled. Because chaos could be useful. And he'd spent years preparing for every contingency. Even this one. The Senate building on Coruscant descended into pandemonium within minutes of the broadcast. Senators screamed accusations across chamber floors. Security forces received contradictory orders. HoloNet communications exploded with trillions of voices demanding answers, denials, and justice. The carefully maintained order of galactic civilization cracked like overstressed Durasteel. In his private office, Chancellor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, sat in perfect calm. His aged hands were folded on his desk. His expression was grandfatherly concern. But his eyes, for anyone perceptive enough to see, burned with yellow intensity. Master Windu, he said into his communicator, his voice trembling with just the right amount of shocked betrayal. Thank the Force you've contacted me. This broadcast, these terrible accusations, surely the Jedi Council doesn't believe this madness. Mace Windu's hologram stood rigid in the Chancellor's office, his expression carved from stone. Behind him, the entire Jedi Council had assembled in emergency session. Chancellor, we need you to submit to questioning. Voluntarily. These allegations require investigation. Of course, of course. I have nothing to hide. Palpatine's voice quavered perfectly. Though I must say, Master Jedi, I'm wounded that you would give credence to the ravings of an interdimensional terrorist who's attacked Republic forces and... He saved Republic forces, Mace interrupted, his voice hard. He exposed a conspiracy within our clone army. And his evidence includes communications that bear your personal encryption codes. Palpatine's expression shifted, just slightly, just enough. The mask of the concerned politician slipped, and beneath it, something cold and ancient looked out. Evidence can be fabricated, Master Windu. Surely you, of all people, understand that. Which is why we're requesting you submit to Force examination. If you're innocent, the Force will reveal the truth. The Force. Palpatine smiled, an expression that never reached his eyes. Yes, let's discuss the Force, Master Windu. The Jedi have served the Republic faithfully for millennia. But tell me, in all your wisdom, with all your connection to this mystical energy, did you sense my supposed dark side corruption during the thousands of meetings we've had? During the years I've worked alongside your council? The question hit its mark. Mace's jaw tightened fractionally. The truth was damning, the Jedi's vaunted precognition had failed utterly. They'd been blind to a Sith Lord sitting in the Senate building for over a decade. The dark side clouds our vision, Mace admitted. But no longer. We're coming to escort you to the temple for questioning, Chancellor. Please, don't make this difficult. Oh, I wouldn't dream of it. Palpatine stood, his aged body moving with sudden fluidity. But Master Windu, a question before you arrive. If the Jedi are taking custody of the Supreme Chancellor based on unverified evidence from a criminal outsider, isn't that a coup? The hologram flickered out before Mace could respond. On Christophis, Rick watched the galactic chaos unfold through his equipment with grim satisfaction. Well, that went better than expected. Usually when I expose massive conspiracies, people just shoot the messenger. Your galaxy's actually investigating. Investigation means nothing if Sidious escapes, Obi-Wan said, his lightsaber still ignited but lowered. Count Dooku had withdrawn during the broadcast, his solar sailor lifting off with barely a parting comment. The Sith Lord had recognized checkmate when he saw it. He won't escape. Your Jedi Council's on the way to arrest him right now. Rick pulled up tactical feeds showing Republic forces surrounding the Senate building. Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, Aegon Kohler, CC tie-in, 4 Jedi Masters moving to confront one old man. Should be wrapped up in about 20 minutes. Anakin's expression darkened. You don't understand Sidious's power. 4 Jedi Masters might not be enough. Kid, they're space wizards with laser swords and decades of combat training. He's a politician who can shoot lightning from his fingers. Rick waved dismissively. It's 4-on-1. Math's not complicated. Rick, Ahsoka said quietly, staring at her data pad, the HoloNet's reporting something. The Senate is calling for the Jedi to stand down. They're saying the Council is attempting an illegal coup. Rick's scanner beeped confirmation. Across Coruscant, public opinion was fracturing. Some believed the evidence. Others saw it as separatist propaganda. And a concerning number were siding with Palpatine, the Chancellor who'd kept them safe during the war, the leader who'd promised order and security. Narratives, Rick muttered. It's always about controlling the ERP narrative. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what people believe. Then we need to be there, Anakin said, moving toward the gunships. If Palpatine's turning this into a political battle, the Council needs support. Anakin, we're days away from Coruscant even at best speed, Obi-Wan protested. By the time we arrive. By the time you arrive, it'll be over. Rick pulled out a device that looked like a modified portal gun, smaller, with temporary modifications cobbled from separatist technology. But lucky for you space wizards, I've been working on a solution while fighting assassins and exposing conspiracies. Is that, Obi-Wan stared at the device. Is that your portal technology? Jury-rigged, unstable, single-use version. Yeah. Can punch a temporary wormhole to Coruscant, keep it stable for about 90 seconds before dimensional collapse, and won't strand us in the quantum foam between dimensions. Probably. Rick activated the device. Green energy spiraled into existence, tearing a hole in spacetime. Through it, they could see Coruscant's cityscape. After you, space wizards. That's insane, Obi-Wan said. Yep. It could kill us. Could. Probably won't. 60-40 odds in favor of survival. Those are terrible odds. Best I can offer on short notice. You coming or not? Rick stepped through the portal without waiting for answer. Anakin followed immediately, his faith in action over caution. Ahsoka hesitated for only a second before jumping through. Obi-Wan sighed, a sound of a man who'd given up predicting outcomes, and stepped into the green light. Best I can offer on short notice. You coming or not? Rick stepped through the portal without waiting for answer. Anakin followed immediately, his faith in action over caution. Ahsoka hesitated for only a second before jumping through. Obi-Wan sighed, a sound of a man who'd given up predicting outcomes, and stepped into the green light. Rex and his squad moved to follow, but Rick's voice echoed back through the portal, "Clones stay there. Keep removing chips. If this goes sideways, you're the backup plan." Then the portal collapsed, and they were gone. They emerged on Coruscant in an alley 3 blocks from the Senate building. The portal's closure sent a shockwave of green energy that shattered windows and triggered car alarms. Rick stumbled, his modified portal gun smoking and sparking. Well, that worked better than expected. He tossed the ruined device aside. Also, we're never doing that again. Pretty sure I gave us all low-level radiation poisoning. Where are the masters? Anakin asked, already reaching out through the Force. He felt them, Mace Windu and 3 others, their presences burning bright with determination. And opposite them, a presence so dark it was like staring into a black hole that stared back. "They're in Palpatine's office," Ahsoka reported, checking her datapad. "Top floor, executive wing. Then we move. Now." Anakin was already running, force-enhancing his speed to cover blocks in seconds. The others followed, Rick keeping pace with technology rather than mysticism, repulsor boots that let him fly beside the sprinting Jedi. They arrived to find the Senate building surrounded by clone troopers, thousands of them, creating a perimeter that prevented civilians from approaching. But the clones' weapons weren't pointed outward. They were pointed up, at the Chancellor's office. "Oh, this is bad," Obi-Wan said quietly. "Those are elite guard units. If they've been ordered to prevent anyone from leaving." The Chancellor's office exploded. Not literally. But the Force erupted with such violence that every Force-sensitive within a kilometer felt it like a physical blow. Darkness and light clashed in a conflagration that made the air itself scream. Through the shattered windows, they could see lightsabers, blue and green against crackling red. And then, horribly, the blue and green lights started going out. "No," Anakin whispered. Rick's scanner gave him more detail than Force sensitivity could. 3 Jedi down. Life signs critical. The 4th, Windu, is still fighting, but barely. Your Palpatine just went from politician to death machine in about 10 seconds. "We need to get up there," Ahsoka said, but her voice trembled. They could all feel it now, the overwhelming dark side presence, ancient and terrible, finally unmasked. "Elevators are locked down," Obi-Wan reported, trying his access codes. "Senate security's been compromised. We'd need to." Rick shot a grappling line from his wrist device, the magnetic hook latching onto the building's upper floors. "Or we just climb." Radical concept, I know. They ascended, Jedi using the Force to leap between floors, Rick using technology to keep pace. As they climbed, they heard it, Palpatine's voice, amplified by the dark side, carrying across the cityscape. "The Jedi have betrayed the Republic. They've attempted to assassinate your Chancellor. Even now, they send more of their warriors to finish what their council started." He's broadcasting, Obi-Wan realized with horror. Turning his fight with the council into public spectacle. Smart, Rick admitted grudgingly. If he wins, he's the victim who defended himself against Jedi aggression. If he loses, he's a martyr. Either way, public opinion shifts against the order. He fired his repulsor boots, shooting upward faster. "We need to stop this before." Mace Windu came crashing through a window. The Jedi Master fell 20 stories before catching himself with the Force, landing hard on a speeder platform. His face was burned, his robe scorched, and his expression carried the weight of terrible understanding. He looked up and saw Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka ascending toward him. "Don't!" Mace shouted. "It's a trap. He wanted us to attack. He's too strong, the dark side." Lightning erupted from the shattered window above. Sith lightning, purple-white and screaming with malevolent energy, arcing toward Mace Windu with killing intent. The Jedi Master raised his lightsaber, deflecting the attack, but the strain was immense. Palpatine emerged from his office, floating on dark side energy, his grandfatherly facade burned away to reveal the Sith Lord beneath. His face was twisted with rage and terrible joy, his yellow eyes burning with power that had been hidden for decades. You Jedi are so predictable. Sidious's voice was no longer quavering or kind. It was thunder and venom. I've waited years for this moment. Years of playing the politician, the friend, the ally. And now, finally, you see what I truly am. He raised both hands. Lightning erupted from his fingers, not just targeting Mace, but spreading across the building's exterior, a web of dark side energy that forced the ascending Jedi to halt, their lightsabers barely deflecting the assault. This is the power you fear. Sidious continued, his voice carrying across Coruscant's airways, broadcast to billions. The power the Jedi hoarded, kept from the people, used to control the galaxy. But no longer. I am the Senate. I am the Republic. And the Jedi will be swept aside like the relics they are. Rick analyzed the situation with cold calculation. Sidious wasn't just fighting. He was performing. Every word, every gesture, it was theater designed to justify what came next. And if Rick didn't do something, Order 66 would activate within minutes. Screw it. Rick pulled out a device he'd been saving, a weapon he promised himself he'd never use in populated areas because the collateral damage was too unpredictable. He aimed it at Sidious. Hey, space wizard. Catch. He fired. The weapon didn't shoot energy or projectiles. It shot absence. A bubble of null space that temporarily removed whatever it touched from reality, not killed, not destroyed, just not there for approximately 5 seconds before dimensional physics reasserted themselves. Sidious saw it coming. Through the Force, through his precognition, through sheer dark side intuition. He tried to dodge, but the null space bubble moved faster than thought. It touched him. Darth Sidious vanished. The sudden absence of his dark side presence was like a thunderclap in reverse, an implosion of malevolent energy that left vacuum in its wake. Every Force sensitive on Coruscant stumbled, their connection to the Force momentarily clearer without Sidious's corruption. For 5 seconds, the most powerful Sith Lord in a millennium simply didn't exist. Now. Rick shouted. Whatever you're gonna do it before he comes back. Mace Windu moved first. He leaped up to Palpatine's office, his lightsaber igniting, his entire being focused on one goal, contain the dark side user before he could remanifest and escape. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka followed, converging on the Chancellor's office from multiple angles. Rick flew up on repulsor boots, his scanners tracking the dimensional instability where Sidious had been removed from reality. 4 seconds. Mace positioned himself at the exact point where Sidious would reappear, his lightsaber ready in both hands, his connection to the Force absolute. 3 seconds. Obi-Wan and Anakin flanked the position, their blades forming a triangle of containment. Ahsoka secured the exits, preventing escape routes. 2 seconds. Rick activated every containment technology he had, force fields, gravity wells, dimensional anchors. Not to kill Sidious, but to trap him long enough for the Jedi to act. 1 second. Reality hiccuped. Darth Sidious remanifested, but not as the politician or the Sith Lord they'd seen before. He returned as pure dark side energy given humanoid form, his body crackling with power that had been contained for too long, his expression transcendent with fury and terrible joy. You dare. His voice was legion, echoing with dark side harmonics. You dare use technology against the Force itself? I dare lots of things, Rick replied, activating his containment fields. It's kind of my whole deal. The fields held for exactly 2 seconds before Sidious shattered them with a gesture. Gravity wells collapsed. Dimensional anchors broke. Rick's technology, revolutionary, reality-defying, brilliant, meant nothing against someone who'd spent decades mastering the fundamental forces of the universe. Your science is impressive, Sidious acknowledged, lightning dancing between his fingers. But the Force is infinite. And I am its master. He attacked. Not with lightning. Not with lightsaber. With pure force power, telekinesis that grabbed Rick and slammed him into a wall hard enough to crater the reinforced durasteel. Ribs cracked. Blood filled his mouth. His shields flickered and died. Rick. Ahsoka moved to help, but Sidious gestured and she was thrown across the room, her small body impacting furniture with bone-jarring force. Stop. Anakin's voice carried desperation. His lightsaber came down at Sidious with all his strength, all his skill, all his rage channeled into one perfect strike. Sidious caught the blade with the force. Not deflected. Not blocked. Caught. The plasma blade hung in the air, frozen by dark side energy, inches from Sidious's throat. Ah, young Skywalker. Sidious's smile was terrible. Finally, you show emotion. Finally, you embrace your power. Don't you see? This is what I've been teaching you all along. The Jedi restrain you. I would set you free. You're a monster, Anakin said, but his voice wavered. I'm honest. The Jedi preach peace while waging war. They speak of compassion while forbidding love. They claim wisdom while remaining blind to truth. Sidious's yellow eyes bored into Anakin's. You married Padme in secret. You've had visions of her death. And the Jedi Council, in their infinite wisdom, what comfort have they offered? What solutions have they provided? Don't listen to him, Anakin, Obi-Wan warned, engaging Sidious from the other side. His lightsaber met dark side lightning, deflecting it barely. But I should listen, Sidious continued, his attention somehow on both Jedi simultaneously. Because I can save her. The dark side grants power over life and death itself. Join me, and Padme lives. Refuse, and you'll watch her die, knowing you could have prevented it. For one horrible moment, Anakin hesitated. In that moment, Rick Sanchez, bleeding, half-conscious, his technology destroyed and his body broken, did something he rarely did. He told the truth without cynicism or deflection. Kid, Rick coughed blood, he's lying. The dark side can't save people. It can only take. I've seen it across 100 dimensions. Every time someone makes this deal, power for love, they lose both. You'll lose her and yourself. What do you know? Anakin's voice was anguished. You said you failed your daughter. Maybe if you'd done anything, anything at all. You're right. Rick's admission shocked everyone, even Sidious. I failed her because I thought I was smarter than the universe. Thought I could control outcomes through intelligence and technology. And all I did was push her away. He struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on the wall. Don't make my mistakes, Anakin. Trust Padme. Trust your friends. Trust that some things can't be controlled, only accepted. Sidious's expression darkened. Enough sentiment. He released Anakin's lightsaber and gestured. The Force grabbed both Obi-Wan and Mace Windu, slamming them together with enough force to break bones. Only Anakin remained standing, his lightsaber held in trembling hands, facing the most powerful Sith Lord in a millennium. And making the choice that would define him forever. Anakin Skywalker stood at the precipice of destiny, not the destiny the prophecy promised, but the one he would choose. Behind him, his master and Mace Windu struggled to rise, their bodies battered by dark side fury. To his side, Ahsoka was unconscious, her breathing shallow. And across the room, Rick Sanchez leaned against shattered wall, bleeding and defiant, having just spoken the most honest words Anakin had ever heard from him. Before him, Darth Sidious waited with the patience of something ancient and terrible. Choose, Anakin, Sidious said softly, his voice no longer thunderous but intimate, almost kind. The Jedi will let Padme die because they value their code over life. I offer you the power to save her. All I ask is your loyalty. Anakin's lightsaber trembled. Every instinct screamed conflicting instructions. Save Padme. Serve the order. Trust the Force. Trust himself. The voices of his training, his fears, his loves, all warring in a mind pushed beyond breaking. What about what Padme wants? Ahsoka's voice cut through the chaos. She was conscious after all, pulling herself up with visible effort. Master, have you asked her? Or are you so focused on saving her that you forgot she gets a choice too? She'll die. Anakin's voice broke. I've seen it. Every night, the same vision. She dies in childbirth, and I won't. Visions show possibilities, not certainties, Obi-Wan said, finally managing to stand. His face was bruised, his movements pained, but his voice carried the steady authority of a master. Anakin, the future is always in motion. Your choices change it. Unless the choice itself is what causes the outcome, Rick interjected, spitting blood. Self-fulfilling prophecy. You're so afraid of losing her that you'll do something that guarantees you lose her. Classic tragedy structure. Been watching it play out across this whole Earp dimension. Sidious's expression flickered with annoyance. The interdimensional scientist was still disrupting his carefully constructed manipulation. Mr. Sanchez, your insights are no longer required. Perhaps you should simply cease. He raised his hand. Lightning erupted toward Rick, not the performative bolts he'd used before, but concentrated death, dark side energy that would boil blood and burst organs. Anakin moved. His lightsaber intercepted the lightning, the blue blade absorbing and deflecting the attack. He stood between Rick and Sidious, his stance protective, his choice made. No, Anakin said quietly. No more death. No more manipulation. And no more Sith. For the first time, genuine surprise crossed Sidious's features. You're refusing. Even knowing what it costs. I'm choosing, Anakin corrected. There's a difference. You offered me power. Rick offered me truth. And the truth is, I can't control whether Padme lives or dies. But I can control who I am when I face it. The Force itself seemed to hold its breath. Across Coruscant, Force sensitives felt the moment crystallize, a turning point where prophecy and free will collided and something new emerged. How disappointing, Sidious said, and his grandfatherly mask shattered completely. What remained was pure hatred given form. Then you'll watch her die. You'll watch everyone you love die. And you'll know you could have prevented it. He attacked with everything, lightning from both hands, telekinetic force that tore chunks from the walls, dark side energy that made the air itself toxic with malevolence. The Jedi responded in concert, their lightsabers moving in synchronized defense, their connection to the Force flowing between them like a shared heartbeat. But they were wounded, exhausted, and facing an enemy who'd hidden his true power for decades. Rick, watching from his position against the wall, ran calculations. The Jedi would lose. Not because they lacked skill or power, but because Sidious had planned for this confrontation across years. Every technique they used, he'd studied. Every strength they possessed, he'd prepared counters for. Unless Rick introduced a variable Sidious couldn't predict. Ship, Rick sub-vocalized into his subdermal communicator, remember that thing I said about never using the dimensional destabilizer in populated areas? Yes, Rick, the AI responded from orbit. You were very clear about the catastrophic potential. Yeah, well, plans change. Lock onto my signal. Prepare to punch a Earp hole in spacetime big enough to swallow this entire office level. 5-second duration, then collapse before the dimensional cascade spreads. Rick, that could kill everyone in the building. Or it could stop a Sith Lord from executing Order 66 and murdering every Jedi in the galaxy. Risk-benefit analysis, Ship. Do it. Acknowledged. Targeting solution acquired. Awaiting your signal. Rick pulled himself upright, every movement agony, and limped toward the battle. Sidious saw him coming and laughed, a sound like breaking glass and dying stars. The scientist wants to play hero, How adorable. Very well, die with your new friends. Lightning arced toward Rick. He didn't bother dodging. Just activated the emergency beacon in his jacket and spoke 3 words, now, ship. Now. Reality tore. Not a portal, a wound. Dimensional energy erupted around Sidious's office, creating a sphere of unstable spacetime that existed partially in their dimension and partially in the quantum void between realities. Gravity became a suggestion. Time dilated and compressed randomly. And physical laws took a coffee break. Sidious stumbled, his connection to the Force disrupted by the fundamental wrongness of existing between dimensions. His lightning sputtered and died. His dark side power, so absolute in normal space, couldn't find purchase in quantum uncertainty. What have you done? For the first time, Darth Sidious sounded afraid. Leveled the playing field, Rick replied, though speaking in unstable spacetime made his voice echo across several temporal states simultaneously. Your Force powers manipulate physical reality. Can't manipulate what doesn't have consistent physics. Welcome to my world, Space Wizard. The Jedi, protected by their connection to the Force and Rick's localized shields, moved forward. Mace Windu's lightsaber came down toward Sidious in a strike that would end the Sith Lord forever. Sidious caught the blade, not with the Force this time, but with his bare hand. The plasma should have severed his fingers instantly. Instead, his hand glowed with dark side corruption so intense it actually held the lightsaber at bay through sheer malevolent will. You think this changes anything? Sidious's voice carried across multiple dimensions, harmonizing with itself in ways that made ears bleed. I am the dark side made manifest. I am inevitability. Dimensions, Force, reality itself, all will bow to my will. He pulled on the dark side with everything he had, not careful manipulation, not subtle influence, but raw power that threatened to tear the fabric of space. The dimensional instability Rick had created fought against Sidious's reality-warping strength. 2 impossible forces collided. Rick! Obi-Wan shouted over the roar of competing physics. Whatever you've done, it's destabilizing. This entire section of the city could collapse into quantum foam, yeah, no. Rick was working frantically on his wrist device, trying to contain the dimensional breach before it expanded beyond his control. But Sidious is trapped in it with us. If he escapes, he activates Order 66 and everything we've done is pointless. Anakin looked between Rick and Sidious, between the scientist trying desperately to contain catastrophe and the Sith Lord fighting to escape. And he understood what needed to happen. Ahsoka, Anakin said quietly. Master Kenobi. Get everyone out. All the Jedi, all the civilians in the building. Clear the entire area. Anakin, what are you? Obi-Wan began. I'm staying. Someone needs to keep Sidious contained until Rick can collapse the dimensional breach safely. Anakin's voice was calm, centered, absolutely certain. The Chosen One is supposed to bring balance to the Force. Maybe this is how. No, Obi-Wan said flatly. I won't leave you two. Master, that's an order. Get them out. Anakin smiled, the first genuine smile Obi-Wan had seen from him in years. Trust me. For once, just trust that I know what I'm doing. Mace Windu, his face set with grim understanding, grabbed Obi-Wan's shoulder. We go. The boy's right, someone with Force capability needs to contain Sidious. And Skywalker's the strongest of us. They went. Ahsoka last, pausing at the threshold to look back at her master, her expression carrying everything she couldn't say. Snips, Anakin said gently. You're going to be a great Jedi. Better than me. Just, be yourself. Not what the Council wants. Not what the prophecy says. Yourself. Then she was gone, and it was just Anakin, Rick, and Darth Sidious in a bubble of broken reality. Touching, Sidious spat, his dark side aura flaring. But futile. When this dimensional trick fails, and it will, I'll hunt down every Jedi in the galaxy. Including your precious Padawan. It's not going to fail, Rick said, his fingers dancing across holographic controls that existed half in real space and half in quantum probability. Because I'm going to collapse it while you're still inside. Trap you in dimensional null space until the end of time. Or at least until the heat death of the universe. Whichever comes first. And kill young Skywalker in the process? Sidious smiled coldly. The scientist who lectured about free will and choice, sentencing an innocent to death for political convenience. How deliciously hypocritical. He's right, Anakin said. Rick, if you collapse the breach with me inside. You'll be fine, Rick interrupted, though his voice carried no certainty. Probably. Maybe. Look, kid, I'm not gonna lie to you, the odds aren't great. But they're better than letting Sidious loose with Order 66 ready to activate. Anakin ignited his lightsaber and turned to face Sidious. Then I guess we do this the hard way. What followed wasn't a duel. It was a war, one Jedi and one Sith Lord fighting while reality itself came apart around them. Anakin used every technique he'd learned, every forbidden move he'd discovered through anger, every ounce of force power the prophecy had gifted him. Sidious countered with millennia of Sith knowledge, dark side techniques that predated the Republic, and malevolence that had toppled civilizations. And while they fought, Rick worked. His equipment was destroyed, his technology failing, his body breaking down from dimensional radiation exposure. But Rick Sanchez was, above all else, a problem solver. And this was just another problem. Ship, I need you to punch microportals at these exact coordinates, Rick transmitted, his voice weakening. Drain the dimensional energy gradually instead of catastrophic collapse. It'll take longer, but Anakin might survive. Rick, you're in the breach zone. Those microportals will create gravitational shear that'll probably kill me, yeah. I'm aware. Do it anyway. Rick. That's an order, ship. The microportals opened. Dimensional energy began draining from the breach, slowly reducing the instability. But the gravitational shear was immense. Rick felt his bones stress, his organs compress, his cybernetic enhancements scream failure warnings. And he kept working. Anakin felt it through the Force, Rick's life energy fading, sacrificed to contain something beyond mortality's usual scope. Rick, stop. You're dying. We're all dying, kid. Just a matter of speed. Rick's laugh was blood-flecked. Besides, I've died before. It's not that bad. Though usually I have cloning technology standing by, which, might be a problem this time. Sidious saw his opportunity. With Rick weakening and Anakin distracted, the Sith Lord pulled on the dark side with everything remaining, trying to tear free of the dimensional breach through sheer malevolent will. He almost succeeded. The breach started expanding, reality tearing outward, threatening to swallow city blocks. Rick's microportals weren't draining energy fast enough. Sidious would escape, Order 66 would activate, and everything they'd fought for would collapse. Anakin made his choice. He reached out through the Force, not to attack, not to defend, but to connect. He touched the dimensional breach itself, feeling its wrongness, its existence between states. And then he did something no Jedi had attempted. He used the Force to stabilize dimensional energy, to bridge the gap between Rick's science and the mystical power that bound the galaxy. What are you doing? Sidious screamed, feeling his escape route closing. Bringing balance, Anakin said quietly. The Force and dimensional technology synchronized. Rick's portal stabilized, their drainage increased exponentially. The breach began collapsing in controlled fashion, folding spacetime back into normal configuration. But Sidious was still fighting, still pulling, still refusing to accept defeat. Anakin pushed harder. The Force flowed through him in ways the Jedi texts had never described, not light side, not dark side, but something beyond both. Balance. Understanding. The acceptance that both chaos and order had their place. Impressive, Rick managed, his body failing but his mind still analyzing. You're using force manipulation to compensate for dimensional instability. That's actually brilliant. Didn't know you space wizards could, neither did I. Anakin's voice strained with effort. But it feels right. Like this is what I was always meant to do. Not destroy the Sith or save the Jedi. Just, balance. The breach collapsed. Dimensional energy imploded into a singularity, taking Darth Sidious with it. The Sith Lord's scream echoed across multiple dimensions as he was trapped in quantum null space, not dead, but removed from reality, existing in a state between existence and oblivion where even the Force couldn't reach. Then silence. Anakin and Rick collapsed in what remained of the Chancellor's office, both barely alive, the dimensional breach sealed but reality still shuddering from the violation. Obi-Wan burst back in seconds later, Mace Windu and Ahsoka right behind him. They found Anakin unconscious but breathing, and Rick Sanchez staring at the ceiling with an expression somewhere between triumph and resignation. Did we get him? Rick asked, coughing blood. He's gone, Mace confirmed, having felt the dark side presence vanish completely. Whatever you did, Sidious is no longer in this reality. Good. Great. Fantastic. Rick tried to stand, failed, settled for sitting up against rubble. Now someone activate the broadcast I set up. Tell the galaxy their Chancellor was a Sith Lord, he's been contained, and the war can actually end now. The broadcast is already running, Ahsoka said, showing her data pad. You set it to activate automatically when Sidious's dark side presence was neutralized. It's transmitting evidence, testimony, everything. The Senate's in emergency session. The Separatist Parliament is demanding negotiations. People across the galaxy are, she paused, reading, they're calling for peace. Rick laughed, exhausted, pained, but genuine. Well, look at that. Fixed your space opera. You're welcome. Outside the Senate building, across Coruscant, across the galaxy, the Clone Wars began their long, complicated end. Not with glorious victory or crushing defeat, but with confusion, investigation, and the slow, painful process of truth. And on Coruscant, in a medical facility where Padme Amidala was being treated for stress and pregnancy complications, she felt through their bond that Anakin was alive. Hurt, but alive. And choosing, every moment, to remain the man she loved rather than the monster he'd feared becoming. The prophecy had been fulfilled, just not as anyone expected. Balance had come to the Force. 3 months after the dimensional incident, as historians would label it, the galaxy was still rebuilding. The Republic hadn't fallen, but it had transformed. Chancellor Palpatine's machinations had been exposed completely, and emergency elections were underway. The Jedi Order was restructuring, questioning its role as generals and returning to principles of peacekeeping and education. The clone army was granted citizenship, though many chose to remain soldiers by choice rather than programming. And on Christophis, Rick Sanchez completed his particle accelerator. You're really leaving, Anakin said, watching Rick calibrate his portal gun. The Jedi looked different now, his eyes clearer, his presence less conflicted. Padme stood beside him, visibly pregnant with the twins that had once haunted his visions. In this timeline, she would survive childbirth. In this timeline, Anakin would be there to raise his children. Told you I would, Rick replied, his injuries healed through combination of Republic medical technology and his own biological enhancements. This isn't my galaxy, kid. I did what I did because you deserved a choice. Now you've got one. Use it wisely. We couldn't have done this without you, Obi-Wan said, standing with Ahsoka and Rex. The Jedi Order owes you a debt we can never repay. Then don't try. Just be better than you were. Stop treating prophecy like destiny and start treating it like suggestion. Rick activated his portal gun, and green energy spiraled into existence. Oh, and Rex, keep removing those chips. Every clone deserves to know they're choosing their loyalty. Will do, sir, Rex said, saluting. The portal stabilized, showing another dimension beyond, somewhere else in the infinite multiverse, another problem, another adventure, another chapter in Rick Sanchez's endless journey. Rick paused at the threshold. One more thing, Anakin. Your kids, Luke and Leia, according to the medical scans, they're gonna be powerful. Maybe more powerful than you. When they're old enough, teach them what I taught you. Power means nothing if you don't choose how to use it. I will, Anakin promised. Rick nodded, turned, and stepped through the portal. It collapsed behind him, taking the interdimensional scientist back to wherever he belonged, leaving the Star Wars galaxy forever changed by his passage. Think we'll see him again? Ahsoka asked quietly. I hope not, Obi-Wan replied with a slight smile. One encounter with Rick Sanchez was quite enough for several lifetimes. But across the galaxy, in rebuilt Jedi archives and freed clone barracks and diplomatic chambers where former enemies negotiated peace, people would remember. They'd remember the scientist who appeared from nowhere, exposed their greatest conspiracy, fought beside them despite every reason not to, and left asking nothing in return except that they choose to be better. Some called him a hero. Others a chaotic element that nearly destroyed reality. A few suspected he was something beyond either category, a force of nature that existed to remind comfortable civilizations that the universe was bigger, stranger, and less controllable than they imagined. Rick Sanchez wouldn't have cared what they called him. He was already in another dimension, having another adventure, making another mess of someone else's carefully ordered universe. Because that's what he did. And somewhere in the Force, if Force could reach across dimensions, the galaxy far, far away whispered its gratitude to the man who gave them back their choice. May the Force be with you. More stories await.